My name is Clara. I'm 38 years old, a housewife who works part-time. My only daughter, Mia, graduated from college last year and moved out. Now it's just me and my husband, Henry, who's 50. With Mia grown up and out of the house, I have more free time. But then something happened that I didn't see coming. Henry and I met on a blind date, and we hit it off right away. Things moved fast, and before we knew it, we were married and had Mia. Being a mom was new to me, but I wanted to do my best for her. When Mia was born, I quit my job to stay home with her. I handled everything, cleaning, cooking, and raising our daughter, all on my own. Henry wasn't much help. After work, he'd either go out drinking or spend his days off doing whatever he wanted. If he stayed home, he just lays around in his room. And yet, he acted like being a housewife was a breeze. "You've got it easy," he'd say. "No real work, and you live here for free." He's completely out of touch. I thought about leaving him, but I didn't want to break up our family over his bad attitude. I figured it was better for Mia to have both parents around. So I decided to raise Mia on my own, without expecting anything from Henry. He became nothing more than the guy who brought home a paycheck. That worked, at least for a while. But when Mia started middle school, Henry started taking money from our savings. I need it for work equipment. It's for business meetings. He always had some excuse, but he was draining our money. I had to step in, so I started working part-time to keep us afloat. Even then, Henry never stopped complaining. "Don't talk about work like you know something. You're just a part-timer. Women's work is nothing. It's as easy as playing around." He clearly had no respect for women, period. On the outside, I smiled and stayed quiet, but deep down, I promised myself I'd get even one day. Then, late one winter night, the phone rang. It was my uncle, my mom's brother, calling to tell me that my mom had been rushed to the hospital and was in critical condition. He gave me the name of the hospital. I got ready quickly and woke Henry up. Even though he didn't want to go, I convinced him to drive me there. My mother, Helen, had been living alone since my father, Robert, passed away a few years ago. My dad was a strong, dependable man, and I adored my mom, who always had a calm and gentle smile when she was with him. My dad passed away after battling an illness for years. Even after losing him, my mom stayed strong and lived quietly, always there to listen when I needed to vent about my husband, Henry, and his behavior. Hearing that my mom might not make it was heartbreaking. Sitting in the car, I silently prayed that she would hold on. When we got to the hospital, my Uncle Tom and a few other relatives were already there. They told me what had happened. Mom woke up in the middle of the night with chest pains. Unsure what to do, she called Uncle Tom, who urged her to call an ambulance right away. After hesitating, she finally did. Uncle Tom rushed over to her house, went with her to the hospital, and called me as soon as he knew where they were taking her. I couldn't thank him enough for what he did. When I saw my mom, she was unconscious, but I still called out to her, hoping she could hear me. The doctor told us it would take some time before her condition stabilized. While we were talking about what to do next, Henry's voice suddenly interrupted. "Huh, is this finally done? You woke me up in the middle of the night for this nonsense. Let's just go home already." He was sitting off to the side, clearly annoyed. I had been so focused on my mom that I forgot he was even there. "Go ahead," I told him calmly. "Please just go home without me." Even though my mom was unconscious, I worried she might hear his cruel words. I couldn't let him stay and make things worse. But instead of leaving quietly, Henry sighed dramatically and added, "What a waste of time. She's not even leaving much behind." Honestly, she was a useless old hag right to the end. As soon as he left, my relatives surrounded me with concern. I took a deep breath, steadied myself, and said, "Don't worry about me. I've already decided I'm going to divorce him." The next day, after Henry left for work, I packed a small box of clothes and personal belongings. I brought it to my Uncle Tom's house and left my home for good. I had secretly been planning to divorce Henry in a few years after he retired, but his heartless words at the hospital made me realize I couldn't wait any longer. I couldn't keep living with someone who disrespected my mother like that. For now, I rented a room at a small business hotel. Then I reached out to the lawyer I had been consulting for a while. That night, Henry called my cell phone. "Hey, what are you doing? Your mom's still in the hospital, right? You don't need to take care of her now, do you? The funeral isn't even here yet. Why don't you come home and cook dinner?" "Leave me alone, Henry. I'm not coming back. I'm divorcing you." He laughed mockingly. "Ha! You? Divorce me? You're just a housewife with a little part-time job. Go ahead and try." Then he hung up. But just a few days later, he called again. This time, his tone was completely different. "What's this? Divorce papers and alimony demands. What the hell is going on?" he yelled, sounding panicked. Unlike him, I stayed calm. "I told you I'm divorcing you. The alimony is for the emotional damage I've endured because of you." "What? What emotional damage?" "I've kept records of all the terrible things you've said to me. I wrote everything in my diary and on my blog. My lawyer says it's solid evidence." "What evidence?" It seemed he never realized I had been quietly preparing for this moment. "From now on, you'll have to speak to my lawyer if you want to talk about the divorce. Goodbye, Henry." I ended the call. Not long after that, we finalized the divorce. Henry and I had savings of $200,000, which were supposed to be split between us. But since the alimony amount was equal to his share, we agreed I would keep all the money. At first, he fought hard against this. "There's no such thing as a wife's share. I earned that money, and if you take over your useless mom's house, that belongs to me too." But my lawyer stayed calm and explained everything clearly. "If you push this to mediation or court, it will cost you a lot more time and money. Are you sure you want that?" By hinting at the potential costs, the lawyer got him to back down. When everything was settled, Henry spat out one final insult. "You took all my money. You're a..." But his words didn't bother me. He just sounded like a sore loser. Less than 2 months after the divorce, my mom passed away. I acted as the chief mourner with the support of my relatives. A little while later, I got a call from Uncle Tom and his wife, asking to meet. They sounded serious, though I felt a bit nervous as I went to the restaurant where we agreed to meet. Once we sat down, Uncle Tom didn't waste any time and got straight to the point. "Clara, I need to tell you something," Uncle Tom said. "I got a call from Henry recently. He was asking to borrow money. I already knew about your divorce and how it all went down. So if I had answered the phone, I would have just yelled at him and hung up. But it wasn't me who picked up. It was my wife." "Yes, I was the one who talked to Henry," Aunt Linda added. "I already knew about everything that happened between you two, including his outbursts at the hospital. I never planned to lend him money, but I was curious about what he'd say. So I pretended to be sympathetic and asked him why he needed the money." "Good move, Aunt Linda," I said with a smile. "But seriously, why? Why would he need money?" I was curious too. Sure, I kept the savings after the divorce. But Henry had a job. He should have still been getting paid. "Well," Aunt Linda explained, "he gambled away his paycheck. And when he ran out of money, he borrowed from credit companies. Eventually, they started garnishing his salary and his boss found out. To avoid getting fired, Henry decided to take early retirement." "Wow," I said, shaking my head. "That's a disaster. But didn't he get severance pay when he retired?" About that, Uncle Tom said, he used something called an advance payment system. Basically, the severance pay he would have received at retirement was added to his salary and bonuses years ago. But because he quit early, he owed the company a portion of the money back. With no severance pay, no job, and no way to borrow more money, he's completely stuck. I was stunned. I had no idea he'd been using an advance payment system. Thinking back, I realized he had stopped showing me his pay stubs years ago. That must have been when he started using it. So after hearing his story, Aunt Linda continued, "I told him, oh my, let me talk to my husband about it," and then hung up. She chuckled, clearly amused. Later, I learned that Henry hadn't just called Uncle Tom. He had reached out to every relative, asking for money. But how could anyone lend him money? Even the people who attended my mom's wake and funeral had heard about his awful behavior at the hospital. I had no sympathy for him. It seemed like he'd run out of people to turn to. Then one day, my cell phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. "Hello," I answered. "Hey, it's been a while. How are you?" It was Henry. His voice was different, sticky and strange, almost unrecognizable. Hearing it gave me goosebumps. Henry's slimy voice came through the phone. "I went by your mom's house. They're doing some construction. Are you planning to move in after it's renovated?" "No, I'm renting it out," I said firmly. "I thought about living there myself, But since my ex-husband knows where it is, I didn't think it was safe. So I decided against it. I didn't feel the need to explain anything more. Then where are you living now? He asked. I'm not telling you. What? Come on. It's a condo with a concierge at the entrance. People can't just walk in. A condo. Henry sputtered, clearly shocked. No wonder he was surprised. What he didn't know was that I had inherited a large fortune from my mother, a sum far greater than the alimony I received. The story went back to when my father passed away a few years ago. My father had been a tax accountant. When he got sick, he asked one of his colleagues to help manage my mother's finances and my future inheritance. At the time, I was already worried about Henry's terrible money habits, so I suggested to my mom that she disinherit me temporarily. As a result, my mom inherited everything from my dad without Henry ever knowing. When Henry asked me about my dad's inheritance back then, I lied. I told him that the inheritance was negative because of a mortgage and that I had given it up. He believed me without question and never brought it up again. After my mom passed away, I inherited everything. Now, because we're divorced, there's no way for him to touch any of it. My mom was a simple woman who loved high-quality, timeless things, and she never flaunted her wealth. I'm sure Henry always assumed she was poor. He had no idea what was really going on, and I wasn't about to fill him in. If you can afford a condo, why not lend me some money? He asked. Come on, Clara. We raised a kid together. The only thing I'm grateful for is that I met Lily, but that's it. You left me to raise her alone while you insulted me and looked down on me. Do you honestly think I'd help you now? Hey, let's just forget the past and start over, he said, trying to sound convincing. Not a chance. And by the way, aren't you still working full-time? You get a good paycheck, don't you? Unlike me, a mere part-timer. And when you retire, you'll get a nice bonus, right? What? Yeah, about that, he stammered. What's the problem? You were getting a retirement bonus, aren't you? You should use it wisely. I paused for a moment. Anyway, goodbye, Henry. Without waiting for his reply, I hung up the phone. I acted like I didn't know anything about his financial troubles. Honestly, I was ashamed of myself for ever being married to him. I made sure to block the number he had called from so I wouldn't get any more calls. 6 months later, my daughter, Lily, came to stay with me. Mom, I love your new place. I can't wait to have a house like this someday, she said, looking around at the space, which felt a little too big for just me. Lily, your place is great too. Didn't you say you liked it? Yeah, but I can't afford a place like this with my salary. I guess it's only my first year, though. She took a sip of her after-dinner coffee and gave me a wry smile. Seeing her smile like that made me feel calm inside. My ex-husband rarely came up in our conversations anymore. Mom, actually, there's someone I want you to meet. Oh, really? Do you have a boyfriend now? What's he like? Well, don't laugh. But he's a tax attorney. A tax attorney? I laughed. Yeah, can you believe it? And here's the funny part. One day, I found a book on his bookshelf. Turns out it was the one Grandpa wrote. I thought it was fate. Wow, Lily, that's such a nice coincidence. Grandpa would be so happy to know. Lily smiled shyly. I looked forward to the day when I'd see her future husband by her side, both of them sharing a gentle smile.
My name is Rose Watson, and I've been married for a decade, living separately from my mother-in-law who resides far away. Recently, I learned that she's retired and suffering from a debilitating backache, preventing her from working. Consequently, my husband has been diligently sending her money each month. Hey, make sure to transfer this month's money to Mom, will you? He asked. I assured him, sure, no problem. I won't forget. Even if I forget everything else, thanks. That helps a lot. I appreciate it. My husband visits his mother at least once a month, assisting her with tasks she can no longer manage. However, on one occasion, he returned from her place agitated, suddenly accusing me. What the hell have you done? Perplexed by his sudden anger, I stared blankly as he continued accusing me. All this time, I've been struggling to send her money, and you didn't care about my feelings. I told you to transfer $1,000 every month. I did transfer it, I insisted. I'm telling you it's not been transferred. Do you have any idea how hard it is to send that $1,000? I understand. I've had to take part-time jobs and scrounge for money just for that, he retorted. Knowing all that, why didn't you send it? I did send it. Why are you saying this? Just calm down a bit, I urged. How can I be calm when mom is struggling because she doesn't get the money from me and has even started doing piecework? He exclaimed. But I definitely did send it. Are you saying my mom is lying? I questioned. Then there's no way my mom would lie to me. You can't just make an assumption and then get mad when it's not true. I don't even know why this is happening. I've been sending her the money you give me every month. Then why is she doing piecework? She's in pain, lifting heavy boxes. I don't know about that. I haven't seen it. You never go to my family home. I go every month, but you never come with me. You just don't care about my mom, he accused. That's not true. There's no need for me to go every month, and it's so far away. I don't want to waste my only day off, I defended. Waste your day off? It's visiting family. How can that be a waste? He argued. Well, that's your family. You wouldn't think twice about it, but you don't go to my family's house, do you? I responded. Of course not. You married into my family, but I didn't marry into yours. You shouldn't say things like that. It only causes trouble, he countered. You're the one causing trouble. I muttered to myself, wondering if he even realized what he was saying. Frustrated, I tried to escape to the kitchen, but he followed me, still angry. Huh. I'm not running away. I just want you to calm down. Maybe we should have a coffee and talk this through, I suggested. I don't need that. Give me back all the money I've been giving you to send to my mom, he demanded. Why are you saying that? I'm your wife of 10 years. I've never lied to you. You should just believe me when I say I've sent it, I pleaded. I bet you've been spending my money. What'd you buy? Where's the $1,000 going every month? He accused. If I had bought something, there'd be new things in the house, right? But there aren't. If it were clothes, there'd be new clothes, but there aren't. I haven't bought a single piece of jewelry since we got married. I don't understand why you're accusing me, I defended. Even so, you must be using it for something. Or maybe you're saving it for yourself, planning to leave me, he speculated. Why would you even think of divorce? We have kids, I questioned, bewildered by the sudden turn in our conversation. I would never entertain such thoughts. How am I supposed to know I can't trust someone who lies like you? Why won't you understand that I've been sending the money to your mom? Then why isn't it reaching her? I have no idea. Could you be sending it to the wrong place? No way. I have your mom's bank account number registered with a bank. Unless she changes it, there's no way that could happen. Then the only thing I can think of is that you're stealing it. Stealing? Yeah, that's right. You're stealing my money, not sending it to my mom. That's it. I want a divorce. I can't be with a thief like you. Let's get divorced. It's clear you've been stealing the $1,000 meant for my mom every month. Hold on. Why does it have to come to this? What about our kids? I don't care about the kids. I don't need a wife who makes my mom suffer. No matter how much I tried to have a rational conversation, my husband just couldn't stay calm. And to say he didn't care about our kids, I've been desperately trying to make him believe me. But it's been hours of getting nowhere. Then there's nothing else to be done. After 10 years together, thinking this, I quietly responded to his demand for divorce. All right, divorce it is. Kicked out by my husband, I left the house with our child. Make sure you file the divorce papers. Conveniently, he had already prepared the divorce papers, as if he knew this would happen. I never thought I'd have to sign something like this, but now there was no other choice. I left the house, went straight to the office to file the papers, and decided to stay at my parents' house for now. My child was shocked by the sudden turn of events, but all I could do was reassure them with empty words. It's going to be okay. Then, after settling down in a new place with my child, I got a call from my ex-husband, Mark. Something weird is happening. Out of the blue, Mark started talking as if we were still married. What do you want with me, a stranger? Now, I know we're strangers. You call me suddenly. Don't even ask about your child, and say something weird is happening. You sound much weirder, you know. Well, here's the thing. I've been sending the money to my mom myself, but she says it's not being transferred. Maybe you're not transferring it. That's impossible. I did it myself. I don't know about that. Maybe you're doing it unconsciously, or perhaps you only dreamed you did it. Don't compare me with you. Then don't call me. I'm not free to deal with this. You're working as usual. So, you're free. How much more will he belittle me? He must think I'm just sitting around doing nothing. My bank statement shows I sent the money. The money's been withdrawn, but my mom says she didn't receive it. What do you think that means? Maybe you sent it to the wrong person. Then where did I send it? I don't know. Maybe you're giving it to some other woman. That's ridiculous to me. It's ridiculous to even have this conversation, but Mark doesn't seem to think so. Anyway, I have nothing to do with it. Wait, that's too cold. You can't just cut ties so easily. I'm not cold. The moment you decided on divorce, you were out of my life. How can you cut ties so easily? A woman doesn't look back. What's the use of dwelling on the past? On you, it's a waste. I'm in trouble here, not my problem. Can't you at least listen to me? How utterly self-centered. All right then, start from the beginning. Tell me what's happening and what's going on. Well, it was the day I said I wanted a divorce, remember? I went to check on Mom at her house, right? I asked her why she was doing piecework, even though I send her $1,000 every month. She said she hadn't received any transfers, so she had to do piecework to get by. Now I get it. That's why you were so angry, and you thought I was pocketing the money. Yeah, that's right. But even when you transferred it yourself, it didn't get there. Yeah, that's what's happening. So doesn't that mean it wasn't me? Well, I don't know about that. When you were in charge, maybe you were pocketing the money. That's awful. If that's what you think, then I'll go to your family's house myself. What are you going to do there? Maybe I'll find out something if I go. Yeah, maybe. So we ended up going to my husband's family house together for the first time in a while. When we got there, his sister was there. Oh, why are you here, Selena? I came back because I'm worried about Mom. What about your husband? We're divorced, just like Mark. Oh, so you divorced and came back to your family home? Yes, I did. When did you come back? 6 months ago. 6 months? Never mind that. Mom, is it true that you didn't receive the money I sent? It's true. It doesn't change the fact that the money wasn't received, whether both of you are here or not. But did you print out your account record in your bank book lately? Yes, I did. Just 2 days ago. Can I see the bank book? Sure, you can't show that. Why would you show a bank book to someone else? You're a stranger now. Why would you think she'd show you something so important? Are you out of your mind? But we can't know if the money really wasn't deposited unless we check. You don't need to see it. Then I'll look. I'm her son. It shouldn't matter. Fine, look. There's hardly anything in there anyway. My mother-in-law said this and then fetched the bank book from a drawer in the next room. But when we looked at the bank book, there were deposits and withdrawals. Look, Mark, there's a deposit from you here, and it was withdrawn the next day. That's quite punctual. Before this, even if you deposited it, it wasn't withdrawn immediately. I couldn't go to the bank much because of my back pain. I would wait until it was absolutely necessary, but since Selena came back, she's been going to the bank for me, which has been a big help. Ever since Selena returned, she's been the one going to the bank. The money was always withdrawn the next day, according to the bank book. Mark and I instinctively looked at her. What? I don't know anything about this, she said desperately. But from what we see here, it looks like you withdrew it, Selena. Mom doesn't go to the bank, and maybe someone else has Mom's card and is withdrawing the money every month. I don't have a card. I'm afraid of losing it, so I never made one, she replied anxiously. Tell the truth, Selena, Mark urged. All right, it was me. Mom told me to withdraw the $1,000 she was getting each month. I saw it was being deposited every month, so I thought borrowing a little bit would be okay. If you're borrowing it, are you planning to pay it back? I interjected. I intend to pay it back. I just don't have the money for it right now, she confessed. Why would you do such a thing? Mark questioned. I really needed the money. I only borrowed it because I had to. Besides, Mom's managing to get by. Isn't that fine? Selena justified. Were you that desperate for money? His mother softened her tone and asked. Then Selena completely changed her tone from her previous assertiveness, now playing the role of a pitiful victim. If that's the case, it can't be helped. Mark was kind enough to send the money. But this is an unavoidable situation. Yeah, if sister was in trouble, it's the family's job to help after all, Mark reasoned. Despite his rage and accusations towards me, Mark forgave his sister as if nothing had happened. Hey, I was called a thief over this, and now you're just going to let it go because it's your sister. It can't be helped. She said she's in trouble. That's fine for your money, but don't you have something to say to me? I challenged. Not really. No, not even an apology after all the horrible things you said to me. Why should I apologize? I don't see any need to. I was hurt by what you said, Mark defended. Such a fragile mental state, I muttered to myself. Anyway, it's not like I did anything wrong, right? Selena was having a hard time, so this happened. It's not Mark's fault. He doesn't need to apologize, his mother supported. Isn't this just like being completely surrounded by enemies? Even if I speak the truth, this place is hostile territory. There's no doubt that anything I say will be met with opposition. Even though a quick look at the bank book would have clarified everything, I had to travel all this way just to be treated like this. Fine, if cutting ties with you costs me this much, it's a small price to pay. I'm leaving. Drive me to the station, I demanded. Why do I have to take you? We're divorced, remember? I don't have to do anything for you, a stranger, Mark retorted. Because I came all this way for you. You asked me for help, I argued. Did I? I don't remember asking you to come. I just wanted some advice. You came here on your own. You can leave on your own too. Mark snapped. That's right. You're not a couple anymore. Why should he take you? It makes sense for a husband, but not for a stranger, his mother added. What a group. No thank you or sorry for solving the issue. After spending 10 years with such a man, it felt like such a waste of time. Fine, I'll take a taxi. I don't need you, I declared, frustrated. I called the taxi and somehow managed to get home. As I arrived home, tears of frustration streamed down my face, and I swore never to listen to that man again. However, after a while, my husband called me. Maybe he had changed his mind and was about to apologize for what happened. Perhaps he'd explain that he had to act that way in front of his sister and mother. But my expectations were shattered. Can you lend me some money? He asked abruptly. Shouldn't you say something to me first? Oh, long time no see, I replied. That's not what I mean. You're being troublesome, you know. It's not normal to ask for money without even apologizing first. That's not true. We were a married couple after all. You could say we were a united fate. That's not the case anymore. The day we split up, our united fate dissolved. I still think we're a united fate, though. He keeps saying whatever he wants. So lend me some money, will you? Why? The truth is, I found out Selena has a huge debt. Wait, it's been quite a while since that day. Didn't you ask her what she spent the money on? I couldn't ask her that. It would have been too pitiful. Money is a delicate subject. Maybe her ex-husband had something to do with it. Or there might be some other reason. Sure, there must be some reason. But you should have asked about it for the future, right? I trusted her because we're family, and yet there was no trust for me at all. Well, I've known Selena way longer than I've known you. Yeah, since we were born. That's why I trusted her. I thought everything would be fine, but in the end, it wasn't fine. So what happened? It turns out she had a huge debt, and the $1,000 a month wasn't enough. How much does she need then? She wants to repay it all at once. It's true that paying it off in one go would save on interest, but I don't have that kind of savings. So why did you contact me? Because you said you had a good amount of savings when we were in the car going to your parents' house. I remember. I was insulted by him, saying I must be struggling without money since our divorce, and that I would have stolen the money if he continued to ask me to make the transfers. Angered by his belittling words and the assumption that I couldn't survive on a part-time job, I ended up revealing that I was trading stocks and making a good profit. But would that lead to an ex-wife being asked for a loan? Selena says she's in debt for $30 million. $30 million? Yes, so please lend me the money. It's okay, right? First, why does she have such a huge debt? I was curious too, so I asked her. It turns out most of it was from shopping, and it's all brand items. She just can't control her desire when she sees them and ends up buying things. She put everything on revolving credit, so the interest adds up, and she keeps buying more every month. Before she knew it, her debt reached $30 million. She's really careless. Mark, laughing off his carelessness, is quite careless himself. She didn't understand how revolving credit works. She thought she could just pay a set amount each month, and eventually it would be paid off. I guess I can understand that feeling. I can't understand it at all. How could she take such a risk? And wasn't this the reason for her divorce? Now she finally realized the interest is piling up, and it's becoming a serious problem, so she came crying to me, but I don't have that kind of money. I told her I couldn't give more than $1,000 a month. Then she suggested borrowing from you. What? Why me? You said we were strangers, and you didn't even need to drive me to the station. That's all in the past. The past should be washed away like water under the bridge. What a selfish and convenient way of thinking. Would anyone accept that? So you could afford to lend it, right? Well, yes. I do have that much in savings. Then lend it to me. I just made a lot of money with stocks recently, so you win some, you lose some with stocks, right? Yeah, that makes sense. But didn't you say stocks were like gambling? Isn't it gambling? You always ridiculed me for playing the stock market, calling it a gamble. Right, did I? When you wanted a divorce, you hurried to separate because you said having a wife who gambles on stocks would lead to trouble. I said that when I didn't know how much you had saved. So that's why you asked me how much I had. That time you ridiculed me, but then I mentioned I had savings. Well, yeah, I didn't expect you to have that much, but I'm glad. I inquired, but even at that stage, you still dismissed it as gambling. Well, yeah, but let's not worry about it. I was foolish. All right, that's not all right. You are really cruel, and now you want money I saved for our child. You're worrying too much. Our child won't need that money for a long time. It's silly to start saving from now. Money rots if you don't use it. Money rots. I've never heard of money rotting. Think of this as an investment. It's like investing in me. Why would I invest in you? Just do it. Lending me the money would be the smartest move, right? Look, if I lend you money, it won't come back, right? You're still sending $1,000 a month to your mom. Where will you find the money to pay me back? All right, I'll pay back $11,000 a month. Are you crazy? How many years do you think it will take to repay it that way? Don't say that. I really regret it. Regret? Yeah, if we hadn't split up, I wouldn't have to beg you for money now. I have to ask, isn't that unjust? So you're just after my money? No, it's not like that. We don't have love, but we can rely on each other. It feels like I'm only being relied upon. You're so rigid. Thinking like that won't make you happy. We could even remarry. I didn't mind our marriage that much. Wow, I do mind. I don't want to be with someone who can't apologize. Fine, I apologize. Sorry. Is that good enough? What are you apologizing for? Explain in 400 characters or less what you did wrong. I just apologized because you said so. Pathetic. Don't ever call me again. Why? I apologized? So will you remarry me or help me? My sister is suffering. Shut up. Go to hell. Saying so, I forcefully ended the call and blocked his number. Later, I heard from mutual friends that Mark, despite saying it was impossible, couldn't refuse Selena. Being not only constantly nagged by Selena, but also persuaded by his mother to help. Consequently, he ended up borrowing money from a consumer finance company to repay her debt in full. Everything was settled, assuming Selena would work and gradually repay the debt. They thought so. However, far from working, she resumed her shopping habits. Despite having suffered before, she again made purchases on revolving credit. This burden eventually fell directly upon Mark to handle. When they confronted her about why things turned out this way, she reportedly said, "I never intended to buy anything. By the time I realized it, I had already processed the credit." Mark and his mother, naively believing Selena's words, just accepted it, saying she must be sick. They neither devised any solutions nor took her to a hospital, despite thinking she is ill. While saying this, Selena, wearing expensive clothes and jewelry, is reportedly laughing over tea with friends, saying, "Really, Mark is so easy to manipulate." Eventually, they couldn't escape the debt and had to sell their family home. Now Mark, his mother, and Selena ended up living together, but they couldn't afford the rent for the apartment they used to live in. So the three of them moved. Apparently, their life is quite difficult now. It seems only Selena is enjoying it, but neither Mark nor his mother realized this. On the other hand, I continue to profit from the stock market and now live a comfortable life in a spacious apartment with my child.
It was a calm evening at home until the phone rang and changed everything. Marcus and I were having dinner, salmon and roasted potatoes I cooked, when his phone started buzzing. He looked at the screen and froze. "Who's calling?" I asked. "It's Selena," he said with a serious look. Selena, his 19-year-old daughter from his troubled first marriage, whom he hadn't spoken to in years. My heart sank. This couldn't be good. Marcus answered the call, and I watched his face closely as he listened, his expression showing worry. After a short conversation, he hung up and let out a deep sigh. "What did she want?" I asked, preparing myself. "She's coming to live with us. Her roommate kicked her out, so she's driving here tomorrow." I dropped my fork, suddenly losing my appetite. "Here? How long?" "She didn't say, but it seems like she's planning to stay for a while," Marcus replied. Panic gripped me. We had worked so hard to create a stable life together. Both of us came from broken families filled with lies and betrayals. It took years of therapy and trust building to heal those wounds. The last thing we needed was a troubled 19-year-old causing more chaos. "Can't her mom take her?" I suggested. Marcus shook his head. "You know how bad things are between them since the divorce." Before I could protest further, we heard the front door open. Our 16-year-old son, Eli, came in from basketball practice, his sweaty hair damp. "Hey, Mom, Dad, what's going on?" he asked, sensing the tension in the room. Marcus managed a weary smile. "We just heard from your sister Selena. She's going to be staying with us for a while." Eli looked surprised. He knew little about Selena beyond the few difficult stories Marcus had shared over the years. Okay," Eli said cautiously. "How long is she going to be here?" "We're not sure yet," Marcus admitted. A tense silence settled over the room, and I could sense the worry spinning through Ellie's mind. Selena's sudden arrival threatened the stability he cherished, but he was too compassionate to voice his concerns. I reached out and squeezed his hand reassuringly before turning to Marcus with determination. "We need to establish clear rules," I insisted. "No taking advantage or expecting a free ride. If she stays here, she has to find a job and contribute." Marcus agreed. "You're right. I'll make sure she understands that when she gets here." As we tidied up after dinner, I couldn't shake the feeling that Selena's return wouldn't bring anything positive. The past has a way of resurfacing, no matter how tightly you try to seal it away. The next morning, I woke with a sense of unease. Today was the day Selena would arrive. Marcus had prepared the small guest room for her, though I doubted she'd be pleased with the cramped space. During breakfast, Marcus attempted to reassure Eli. "Don't worry, I'm sure Selena has matured a lot since I last saw her. Let's try to make her feel welcome." Eli nodded, but his apprehension was clear. Around noon, the sound of a car pulling up outside caught our attention. "That must be her," Marcus announced. My heart raced as we approached the front door. A blonde girl emerged from a worn-out hatchback packed with clothes and boxes. She looked nothing like the withdrawn, skinny 13-year-old I remembered from years ago during the divorce hearings. She had grown tall and attractive, dressed in trendy clothes with skillfully applied makeup. However, her bright smile didn't seem to reach her eyes. Marcus greeted her with an awkward hug. "Welcome home, Selena." "Thanks, Daddy," she replied sweetly, though she hadn't made an effort to stay in touch since the divorce. "It's great to see you again." Over the next hour, Selena brought in her belongings, stacking them in the small guest room. Despite the limited space, she refused Marcus's offers to help, sharply instructing him not to touch her things. So much for her growing up, I thought to myself. During dinner, Selena dominated the conversation, talking mostly about herself and subtly making jabs at me. "I can't believe you're still working as a nurse, Lena. Wouldn't you rather do something more interesting?" I held back my response. Nursing was my passion, but Selena clearly didn't respect it. When Eli shared his plans to apply for college scholarships, Selena scoffed. "Good luck getting enough money to go to a decent school." Eli looked hurt. I knew how much effort he had put into maintaining his straight A's and excelling in sports. After dinner, I pulled Marcus aside. "We need to establish some rules for Selena," I insisted. "We can't tolerate this entitled behavior." He sighed. "You're right. I'll talk to her." But in the following days, nothing changed. Selena continued to behave disrespectfully, refusing to find a job or help with anything around the house. My patience wore thin. Then came the breaking point. One evening after work, I returned home to find Selena gone and Eli sitting alone, looking pale. "What's wrong?" I asked him. My heart sank as Eli revealed what had happened. Selena had stolen his laptop and emptied his money jar, which held over $500 he had saved from his job. Eli looked devastated. Anger surged through me. That money represented years of Eli's hard work and dedication. When Selena finally returned, I confronted her. "Give back Eli's money and his laptop right now," I demanded. She smirked dismissively. "Or what? You'll kick me out." I wanted to react impulsively, but I knew violence wouldn't solve anything. Selena's toxic behavior was tearing apart our family, and I knew I had to protect us, even if it meant making a difficult decision about Marcus's daughter. Right then, I resolved that Selena had to leave. When Marcus arrived home, I wasted no time in telling him what Selena had done. She stole from her own brother after we welcomed her into our home. "I want her out, Marcus. Today," I insisted firmly. Marcus looked torn. "I know Selena's actions are unacceptable, but she's still my daughter. If we kick her out now, she'll have nowhere to go. So we just let her keep taking advantage of us," I exclaimed. "She's manipulating you, Marcus. Can't you see that?" "Please give me a little more time to talk to her," Marcus pleaded. "I believe with some clear boundaries, Selena can change." I sighed in frustration. Marcus's paternal instincts were clouding his judgment about Selena's behavior, but I knew I had to handle this delicately to avoid straining our marriage. "Okay," I relented. 1 week. If Selena's behavior doesn't show significant improvement by then, she has to leave." Marcus reluctantly agreed to give Selena more time, hoping against hope that she would change. But my hopes were quickly dashed as Selena's behavior spiraled out of control over the next few days. She stayed out all night partying, slept until noon, and even helped herself to my jewelry, dismissing my demands for her to find a job with arrogant remarks about living rent-free. Things reached a breaking point one evening when I found her smoking on the couch. When I confronted her, she brazenly blew smoke in my face and defied me, claiming I had no authority over her. I felt sickened by Selena's manipulative behavior. She knew exactly how to push my buttons while putting on a sweet act for Marcus. But the final straw came when I received a call from my credit card company about a suspicious $2,000 charge at a luxury store in Leh. It was clear Selena had used my card without permission, racking up more debt in a week than Eli and I spent on groceries in a month. When Marcus returned home, I couldn't contain my rage any longer. "Your daughter is tearing us apart. I want her out of this house tonight," I demanded, trembling with anger. Marcus looked worn down. "You're right. I wanted to believe Selena could change, but she's completely out of control. It's either her or me, Marcus," I stated firmly. "Choose carefully." He pulled me into a comforting hug. "You and Eli will always come first. I just hope we can get through this without tearing our family apart." We gathered with Selena, and Marcus firmly told her she had to leave immediately. She exploded in anger, hurling insults and accusations. I remained quiet, letting Marcus handle his distraught daughter. When Selena stormed off to pack, Marcus slumped in defeat. "I'm so sorry I brought this chaos into our home," he lamented. "You and Eli mean everything to me. No matter how long it takes, we'll heal from Selena's influence." I squeezed his hand, finding solace in his resolve. With unity, we would overcome this trial. Selena's destructive behavior wouldn't break our family. The weeks following Selena's departure were tense. Marcus attempted to reach out to her multiple times, but she refused to respond. I knew he wrestled with guilt, blaming himself for her actions. I reassured him we had made the right decision. Selena had wreaked havoc like a tornado. We changed the locks and dealt with the fallout from my stolen credit card, thankfully resolved with the bank's support in reversing the fraudulent charges. Gradually, our lives returned to normalcy. My heart sank as I opened the letter, shattering the fragile peace we had started to rebuild. It was from a bank I didn't recognize, thanking me for opening a new credit account. Panic set in as I read through the attached paperwork. Someone had fraudulently applied for a $155,000 personal loan in my name, forging my signature, money that had already been deposited into an unknown account. The implications were staggering. This amount of debt could devastate our family, and there was only one person I suspected could do such a thing. When Marcus returned home, I thrust the letter into his hands. "Your daughter is trying to ruin us. We need to call the police right away." His eyes widened in shock as he scanned the letter. My God, I knew Selena had issues, but identity theft? He sank into a chair, burying his face in his hands. This is all my fault. I failed her as a father. My anger towards Selena began to soften as I saw how deeply Marcus was affected by her betrayal. Sitting beside him, I placed a hand on his shoulder. "You did everything you could for her in such difficult circumstances. Some people just refuse to change. Now we have to focus on protecting ourselves and Eli. Will you call the police to report the fraud?" Marcus sighed heavily but nodded. "You're right. I need to do the responsible thing, no matter how painful." We spent an agonizing hour on the phone with the police and the bank, filing reports about Selena's crime. It was surreal to think that the sweet girl I had seen in Marcus's wedding photos could turn into such a heartless criminal. The bank investigator informed us that the loan had been taken out locally, suggesting Selena was still nearby. The thought sent chills down my spine. That night, as we lay in bed, I turned to Marcus. "We'll work with the bank to invalidate that loan. They believe we're the victims in this." "I hope you're right," Marcus murmured, his voice heavy with worry. "Because if not, this could ruin us financially. We might even lose the house." The unspoken fear hung thick between us. Selena wasn't satisfied with just tarnishing her father's trust. She seemed determined to dismantle our entire family, no matter the cost. As I finally drifted off to sleep, I repeated a silent mantra. Selena's schemes couldn't touch us, no matter how hard she tried. Goodness and truth would prevail, but beneath the surface a cold anger simmered. If Selena continued to threaten my loved ones, I was prepared to do whatever it took to stop her. In the following weeks, there was no word from Selena. The bank's investigation into the fraudulent loan bought us some time before any debts were due. Police attempts to locate her proved fruitless. Selena had vanished without a trace, leaving Marcus to comb through online records in a desperate search for clues. It was clear she knew how to evade capture, an adept manipulator and elusive figure. Then, on a sunny Saturday, our world shifted once more. Marcus was away at a teaching conference for the weekend, so Eli and I decided to catch a movie together. But upon returning home, a sense of dread washed over me immediately. The front door stood open. Heart pounding, I hurried inside, Eli right beside me. "Wait in the hall," I instructed Eli firmly. If Selena was inside, I wanted to shield him from any danger. Moving cautiously, I entered the dimly lit rooms. At first glance, nothing appeared out of place. Then I reached Ellie's bedroom. The sight was devastating. Drawers thrown open, mattress overturned, and the closet in disarray. Eli rushed in beside me, gasping in disbelief. That's when I noticed the paper on his bed, scrawled with a mocking message. "College fund gone. Oops, better start bussing tables, loser brother." Anger surged through me, blurring my vision. The college fund Marcus and I had painstakingly saved for Ellie's future, nearly $20,000, was stolen. Selena had callously used it for her own needs while leaving hurtful insults for her brother, whom she had never bothered to know. I heard a choked sob from Eli, his face drained of color, tears welling in his eyes. "All the money you saved up for me, gone." I hugged my kind, hard-working son, feeling heartbroken for him. "We'll find a way through this," I promised, but inside, I was furious. That money was meant to help Eli have a better life, but Selena had taken it all away without any care. When Marcus came home, he was devastated by the break-in and Ellie's loss. My usually calm husband was furious, just like me. Our savings were gone, our home broken into, and our son hurt for no reason. It was too much. Selena needed to face consequences before she hurt more innocent people. The next evening, ignoring Marcus's warnings, I drove to the old motel where people said Selena was staying. I found her beat-up car parked outside. I knocked on her door until she opened it, smirking when she saw me. "Well, if it isn't Saint Lena, here to lecture me about morals." I slapped her hard across the face. "You're a terrible person," I said angrily. "Didn't ruining our lives once satisfy you?" Selena's smirk disappeared. "You'll pay for that," she snapped, trying to attack me. We struggled briefly before I pushed her back inside and slammed the door in her angry face. I walked away, shaking but determined. Today, Selena's reign of terror ended one way or another. I had given her chances to change, but some people are rotten to the core beyond redemption. Trying to save them risks dragging yourself down too. Selena had shown herself to be heartless and incapable of doing any good. Now it was time to cut her out of our lives for good before she could hurt us again. In the weeks that followed, I nervously waited for Selena's revenge. Marcus tightened security around our house. I kept Eli home from school, afraid to leave him alone until Selena was caught. But as time went on without any sign of her, we started to relax. Maybe she had realized she couldn't stay in town without facing consequences for what she'd done. Late one night, I woke up to blaring fire alarms. Marcus and I rushed to Ellie's room and found it filled with smoke, flames climbing up one wall. We grabbed Eli and hurried outside just before the fire consumed his bedroom. While firefighters put out the blaze, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was no accident. Selena had made a final desperate move for revenge. The police investigation confirmed my suspicions. Traces of gasoline had been found on one side of the house, deliberately set alight. It was a chilling realization that Selena had intended to destroy us as we slept, if not for our timely awakening. Marcus looked exhausted as he spoke to the investigators. Our daughter, Selena Rogers, is your prime suspect for arson. She's already committed identity theft and burglary against us. This fire was her latest attempt to harm my family. After discovering Selena was committing more serious crimes, the police finally took action. They got security camera footage showing someone in Selena's car leaving the area just before firefighters arrived. Arrest warrants were issued for Selena, and her name and photo were shown in the news as a dangerous criminal. Marcus even asked Selena to surrender, promising she'd get a fair trial. But Selena stayed hidden, leaving us stuck in uncertainty, fearing she might strike again. I stayed indoors with Eli, keeping a rifle and fire extinguishers close by. She had already taken so much from us, I wouldn't let her take our peace of mind too. Then one evening I got a surprise call from the detective leading the case, urgently telling me, "You need to check the news now. They just caught Selena Rogers." I rushed Marcus and Eli to the TV, our hands shaking. The news showed Selena in handcuffs outside a pawn shop, stolen things from our house scattered around her, jewelry and electronics. She cursed and spat at reporters while police put her in a car. Selena had thought she couldn't be caught, but she slipped up and got caught red-handed. Reporters talked about Selena's shocking crimes against her own family. Her reputation was ruined, and everyone saw the real monster behind her pretty face. I almost felt sorry for her, almost. That night, with Selena locked up and our home safe, we finally slept peacefully. The coming weeks would be hard, cleaning up the mess Selena made, but the worst was over. Her lies couldn't hurt us anymore. A new day had come, full of hope and promise. In the weeks after Selena was arrested, life slowly returned to normal. With Selena facing serious charges in jail, the heaviness that had burdened our home began to lift. I took Eli out to celebrate his birthday at his favorite restaurants, and Marcus and I spent evenings reminiscing about happier times before Selena came into our lives. We started making plans to repair the fire damage and recover financially. But looming court dates brought anxiety. Marcus struggled with the thought of testifying against his own daughter, despite their strained relationship. I tried to stay strong, reminding myself of the pain Selena had caused us. Then came shocking news. Selena had been involved in a violent fight with another inmate in jail and had died as a result. Marcus was devastated. He withdrew into our room for days, grappling with guilt. Meanwhile, I focused on supporting Eli, who, despite everything, felt saddened by the loss of a sister he barely knew. In the following weeks, we learned disturbing details about Selena's final days. The inmate she fought with claimed Selena had boasted about how she enjoyed deceiving people and wished she had stolen even more from us. Hearing Selena's callous words only hardened my resolve. She had shown no remorse for the pain she caused. In the end, her own greed and aggression had led to her downfall. With Selena no longer around, her case quickly fell apart. The bank canceled her fake loan applications, lifting that heavy debt off our shoulders. The police recovered some of our stolen money from her places. Meanwhile, our community rallied behind us once Selena's crimes came to light, offering sympathy and raising funds to help Eli with his college tuition. Their kindness overwhelmed me. After being trapped in Selena's lies and isolation, the support of true friends felt like escaping a nightmare. Marcus felt it too. We weren't alone. Good people could stand against evil together. On the anniversary of Selena's passing, we visited her grave for the first and only time. Marcus knelt beside her simple gravestone, quietly saying a prayer. I stood with Eli, giving them space. "She wasn't always like this," Eli said softly. "Do you think if she had made different choices, she could have found happiness?" I held my wise son close, embracing his insight. Everyone chooses their own path. Selena's led to destruction, but we're moving forward now, into the light. Marcus joined us, his demeanor finally calm. He took my hand with a gentle smile. "Thank you for staying by my side," he said. "Your love guided me through the darkness." Together, we walked away from Selena's troubled legacy toward a future full of promise. In the months following Selena's passing, our family began to heal. We repaired the fire damage, recovered stolen money, and settled debts. Slowly, we reclaimed what Selena had tried to take from us. Yet some wounds ran deeper. I woke from nightmares of fire consuming our home. Marcus withdrew into solitude, wrestling with guilt, while Eli grew more reserved, startled by every sound and keeping his door locked. That's when I suggested we start seeing a family counselor. Initially, Marcus hesitated, feeling ashamed about needing help. But eventually, he agreed that it was essential for us to heal fully. Our counseling sessions became a source of profound release. We discussed feelings of betrayal, violation, and anger. The counselor taught us techniques to manage anxiety and PTSD, encouraging us to express our emotions rather than keeping them inside, which had strained my relationship with Marcus, who tended to brood. Through these sessions, I discovered depths of pain in Marcus that I had not fully understood before. He confessed that part of his desperate attempts to help Selena stemmed from regret over his perceived failures as a father during his divorce. The counselor helped him see that his intentions were misguided rather than malicious, easing his sense of shame. For Eli, the most comfort came from returning to normal routines. He rejoined school sports teams, volunteered at a homeless shelter, and started working part-time at an ice cream parlor. Focusing on these activities and engaging with the community helped him feel more empowered and less helpless. 6 months later, with our counselor's blessing, we decided to put our troubles with Selena behind us. Using the last of the recovered money, we took a family trip to Hawaii. We enjoyed stunning beaches and delicious dinners, free from tension or drama, just cherishing our time together. On our last night, Marcus and I renewed our vows on the beach at sunset, with Eli proudly officiating. Looking at my two incredible men, my heart swelled with love and pride. Selena had tried to tear us apart, but instead, we emerged stronger. While scars remain, we wear them proudly, refusing to let past pain define us. Our family embodies resilience. During the flight home, I wrote a journal entry reflecting on our journey, which I later shared with Marcus and Eli. The past year brought immense challenges but also profound growth. We've grown closer, our wounds turning into wisdom. Selena's actions reopened old wounds and inflicted new ones, but we've stitched ourselves together, becoming stronger. Our imperfect family doesn't just survive, we thrive. Darkness fades, healing begins, and the enduring light remains. Later that week, I stored my journal in a keepsake box. The last remnants of Selena's havoc, court documents, financial statements, police reports, were discarded. Marcus held me close, saying, "It's finally over. Now we can build something beautiful from the ashes." I smiled at him and embraced Eli. The storm had passed. Ahead of us stretched a bright future, and together we would walk forward, facing the light.
Everything changed in an instant when I heard my husband's harsh tone over the phone. He sharply questioned why I always fell apart when he needed me the most, completely indifferent to the fact that I was in the hospital, worried sick about our baby's well-being. Instead of offering support, he grumbled about his hunger and the lack of my home-cooked meals, saying he was too impatient to wait and planned to eat out with his parents. This left me to figure out how to make my way back from the hospital. His words only heightened my anxiety and sorrow, amplifying my fears for our unborn child's safety and my ability to protect them. I had once been a committed cosmetic salesperson, recognized for my diligence and success, with many accolades to my name. Falling in love with my husband had felt like a fairy tale, and our courtship quickly led to marriage. But after discovering my pregnancy, I faced the difficult decision to leave my job to reduce the risk of miscarriage, prioritizing the well-being of our future family. As my pregnancy progressed, my husband's support dwindled. The initial excitement had given way to irritation, and daily tasks became Herculean efforts. I struggled to meet his expectations, and his constant inquiries about lunch, along with his dismissive comments about the simple meals I managed to prepare, left me feeling disheartened. He trivialized my pregnancy challenges, refusing to acknowledge them as legitimate health concerns, which made me feel isolated and unsupported. This was a stark departure from the man I had fallen deeply in love with. He stopped attending doctor's appointments and showed little interest in the household duties that became increasingly difficult for me. Our home, once a haven of love and respect, had turned into a battleground of constant strife as I fought to safeguard both myself and our baby. Despite these trials, I clung to the hope that understanding and patience would return to our relationship. Perhaps he was just overwhelmed and stressed from mentoring a newcomer at work. I reassured myself that things might improve once the baby arrived and his workload eased. I often whispered words of encouragement to my growing belly, trying to maintain a positive outlook despite my physical discomfort and the tension at home. Unfortunately, my husband's behavior didn't improve. To make matters worse, my in-laws began dropping by unannounced, complicating everything further. They would critique the cleanliness of our home and express concern about how we would manage with the baby. Yet they still expected immediate service when it came to meals. These visits left me feeling defeated and anxious, and my husband siding with their criticisms only deepened my sense of inadequacy. One day, while heavily pregnant, I went out to buy groceries but ended up collapsing from sheer exhaustion. When I regained consciousness in the hospital, relief washed over me to hear that our baby was unharmed, but the doctor advised several days of rest. I noticed missed calls from my husband on my phone, hoping for some sign of his concern when I returned his call. Instead of comfort, his first words were sharp and accusatory. "Where have you been?" His indifference to my well-being and our baby's safety chilled me to the bone. I tried to explain. "I'm sorry. I collapsed at the store and found myself in the hospital. They had put me on IV fluids and wanted me to stay for a few days to recover." When I called my husband to explain, his response was curt and lacking any empathy. "You collapse and I'm supposed to care? Why don't you answer when I call?" "You're so slow," he retorted, worsening my distress. Overwhelmed by his harshness, I pleaded, "Please stop yelling. It's not good for the baby." But he dismissed my concerns, continuing to complain. "We're starving here waiting for your awful cooking, and you're just relaxing in the hospital." It was clear that he preferred dining out with his parents rather than being there for me in my time of need. This realization only deepened the stark negativity surrounding our home environment, an atmosphere I feared would end the life of our child. The sharp sting of my husband's anger and apparent indifference felt crushing. I hung up the phone, feeling utterly abandoned and heartbroken as I shuffled back to my hospital room, tears flooding my cheeks, a stark reflection of my vulnerability. In that low moment, a familiar, comforting voice reached out to me. "Are you okay?" Looking up, I saw Elizabeth, a cherished acquaintance from my days as a cosmetic salesperson, extending a comforting towel toward me. Seeing her again brought me an immense sense of relief and warmth. "Elizabeth, it's you. I'm so glad you remember me." Our unexpected meeting felt like a beacon of kindness and connection in my darkest hour. To me, Elizabeth was more than just a client. After a difficult divorce that had eroded her confidence and led her to shun makeup completely, I had approached her at the cosmetics counter one day, eager to help her rediscover some joy in self-care. The transformation wasn't just about her appearance. It revitalized her self-esteem and marked a significant step in her emotional recovery. Over time, Elizabeth became a friend rather than just a client. However, about 6 years before I resigned from my job, Elizabeth stopped visiting, and I often wondered about her whereabouts. Now, here she was, offering support when I needed it most. "I had been hoping to reconnect with you, Elizabeth." I admitted I was surprised yet grateful as Elizabeth explained her absence. "I'm sorry for just showing up out of the blue," she said. "I've been working abroad, running a business overseas. It's been hectic and I haven't had a chance to enjoy summer or good food in ages." Her words trailed off, but her presence was a profound comfort, reminding me of the bonds that could sustain me through tough times. When Elizabeth mentioned she had just returned and sought me out, her laughter lightened the mood. "Believe it or not, right after I got back, I tried to find you," she chuckled. It turned out that Elizabeth had returned with a mild health scare, a psoriasis, which fortunately had been caught early and was easily treatable with medication. "If this had happened while I was still overseas, the treatment costs would have been astronomical," she explained. "So, in a way, I'm glad it happened here." Her optimism and warm smile were infectious, lifting my spirits as we joyfully reminisced about old times. As our conversation deepened, Elizabeth's expression turned thoughtful. "You don't have to talk about it if you don't want to, but you seemed quite upset earlier. What's going on?" Trusting Elizabeth not just as a former client but as a genuine friend, I confided in her about my current struggles with my husband and in-laws. "I'm really worried about bringing my baby into this environment. I'm afraid they'll be treated the same way I am, and without my job, The idea of living independently, especially with a child, feels daunting. To my astonishment, Elizabeth made an incredibly generous offer. I actually have an apartment you could use. I manage a few properties from a project I started with the land I inherited. It's a cozy 3-bedroom with a separate bathroom, solid roof, and good walls. It's in a safe neighborhood, close to supermarkets and a police station. You wouldn't need to pay a deposit right now, and you can start paying rent whenever you're ready. It's a really good deal. What do you think? Elizabeth's excitement and sincerity were palpable, and I couldn't help but laugh, overwhelmed by her kindness. Are you sure you can offer it at such great terms? I asked. She replied confidently, absolutely. I trust you'll take good care of the place, and I think it's important to support each other during tough times. Her gesture was a profound reminder of the goodness in the world, just when I needed it most. You're more than welcome to stay there, Elizabeth assured me with a warm, comforting smile. Her unexpected kindness felt like a beam of light in my dark times, offering not just a place to stay but also a chance for a new beginning. Overwhelmed by her generosity, I felt a glimmer of hope for the future. I gratefully accepted her offer, and a few days later, after the doctors had cleared me, I didn't return to the home I shared with my husband. Instead, I moved straight into the apartment Elizabeth had arranged for me. She had handled everything over the phone with such ease and kindness that I was left in awe. As I settled into Elizabeth's cozy and welcoming apartment, a twinge of guilt crept in for not paying rent immediately, but she brushed it off with a laugh, insisting that I shouldn't worry about it. While my husband was at work, I took the opportunity to go back to our old house to collect my belongings. The place felt strangely hollow and abandoned, mirroring the emptiness inside me. But Elizabeth's support extended far beyond just providing shelter. She connected me with a lawyer who had previously helped her, which solidified my decision to file for divorce. The lawyer was encouraging, and with each visit to the hospital confirming my baby's health, my resolve strengthened. One day, as I was leaving the hospital, my heart sank at the sight of my husband John, waiting for me. Panic set in, and despite my attempts to leave quickly, my pregnancy slowed me down. He confronted me, demanding answers about the lawyer and our new living arrangement. Gripping my arm tightly, stating my ground, I insisted that any discussions about divorce, compensation, or child support should be conducted through my lawyer. I refused to go home with him. Just then, a young woman named Lisa intervened. She introduced herself and stepped protectively in front of me, her tense interaction with John revealing an underlying strain. Lisa firmly told him that he couldn't force me to leave against my will. Her bold stance was a stark contrast to my vulnerability, providing an unexpected layer of support when I needed it most. Lisa's firm resolve, coupled with her threat to call the police, dramatically shifted the dynamics of the situation, giving me the much-needed boost of hope and courage to stand my ground. Seeing her determination, John quickly retreated, fear evident in his hurried exit. Overwhelmed with relief, my knees nearly gave way beneath me. Lisa promptly came over to support me, asking with genuine concern, "Are you okay?" I apologized, feeling a rush of emotions, but she brushed it off and immediately hailed a taxi to ensure I got home safely. Despite my protests about troubling her, she reassured me it was no bother at all. When I shared my address with her, she was surprised to discover that I lived just below her. What a serendipitous twist that we were neighbors. Lisa, always cheerful and kind, revealed that she was a new employee at John's workplace. She had reported his inappropriate conduct, which had resulted in him being stripped of his mentorship role. John had a history of insensitivity, especially towards female colleagues, often making inappropriate remarks about personal matters such as menstruation and marriage. Lisa confided that the issues with John extended beyond professional boundaries, something I had painfully experienced during my pregnancy. In the 2 weeks since our encounter, Lisa and I had grown close, frequently sharing meals and conversations. She informed me that due to multiple complaints, John had been reassigned to a subsidiary of the company. Intriguingly, Lisa turned out to be the daughter of Elizabeth, the very Elizabeth who owned the apartment I was now living in. I was staying in the apartment, reflecting on how John had often boastfully mentioned managing Elizabeth's account, only to face a demotion due to his poor conduct. Elizabeth had been instrumental in holding him accountable for his actions at work and towards me. Lisa, motivated by her desire to address workplace issues based on her own merits, acted upon realizing my connection to her mother. Elizabeth encouraged Lisa to take proactive steps, emphasizing the importance of standing up against inappropriate behavior in any environment. This revelation deepened the bond between us, as we both appreciated the strength and support stemming from our shared experiences. With John's diminished role and increased responsibilities at work affecting his income, he found himself in a drastically altered position. Elizabeth, leveraging her extensive experience, counseled me to stand firm and not succumb to John's attempts to elicit sympathy. This guidance proved invaluable as I moved forward with my decision to divorce him. Despite John's attempts to reach out through our lawyer, sharing tales of his difficult job situation and expressing longing and apologies, I remained resolute, staunchly supported by Elizabeth. Ultimately, John had no option but to accept the divorce and agree to the terms, which included child support and compensation. As I navigated this new chapter, another challenge arose with my in-laws, particularly my father-in-law, who was overly enthusiastic about the baby being a boy. I sensed the undercurrents of impending issues, and soon enough, my in-laws made their intentions clear. One day, as I was leaving the house, my father-in-law confronted me aggressively, grabbing my arm and declaring that once the baby was born, I must relinquish him to the family, claiming the baby was the rightful heir. Despite my attempts to break free, his grip was unyielding. At that moment, Lisa's commanding voice cut through the tension. With her expertise in judo, skills honed to protect herself and her mother during tough times, she intervened swiftly, employing a maneuver to release me from his hold. Lisa, a nationally recognized judoka, sternly reprimanded my father-in-law for his disregard of John's behavior and his intrusive demands on my life. She staunchly defended my right to a fresh start and made it clear that any further meddling was unacceptable. Just then, the sound of approaching sirens signaled that help was on the way. Lisa had prudently called the police before stepping in to assist me. My mother-in-law, who had been observing from a nearby car, remained silent as the police arrived and detained both her and my father-in-law. The arrest of my father-in-law was a pivotal moment, prompting my mother-in-law to reflect and ultimately decide to divorce him, signaling a significant shift in my tumultuous family relations. When John tried to convince his mother to let him accompany her to start anew in the countryside, she firmly refused, communicating through the lawyer to apologize for her previous actions and leaving some money as a gesture of goodwill. Elizabeth helped me understand that such gestures often stem from a desire for forgiveness and an intention to contribute to my son's future, especially after a significant life change like leaving a marriage. Although I was surprised by her turnaround, given her prior behavior, I appreciated her efforts to make amends. Once the divorce was finalized, I welcomed a healthy baby boy into the world, choosing solitude over a troubled life with John. My mother-in-law moved to the countryside, while when my father-in-law was released from custody, he discovered that she had demolished their house before leaving. With nowhere else to go, he moved in with John, compounding their issues and eventually leading to John's resignation due to his tarnished reputation. Despite these upheavals, child support payments were consistently handled, likely facilitated by Elizabeth and the lawyer. Lisa's courage and integrity at work did not go unnoticed. She was promoted to project leader, earning the respect and admiration of her peers. Elizabeth's various initiatives, including projects for women-only properties and housing for foreigners, continued to thrive. As for me, once my son was old enough, I planned to rejoin the workforce. Elizabeth graciously offered me a position at a new high-end cosmetics store she was launching. Both Elizabeth and Lisa continued to be a great source of support, showing immense affection for my son and treating him as if he were Elizabeth's grandchild. Lisa also made time to visit us regularly. Their unwavering strength and kindness were not only a comfort during my most challenging times, but also a powerful example of the resilience and protectiveness I aspire to embody for my son. Inspired by these remarkable women, I was determined to provide the same level of strength and protection for my son as they had for me. Hello, I'm Kayla, a 36-year-old woman. The past few months have been really tough for me, and I'm having to relearn a lot of things. My husband Tom caused a lot of the trouble I'm in, but a kind person stepped in and helped me avoid even more pain. First, let me tell you about the people in my story. The first person is my sister, Maya. She's 6 years younger than me and very pretty. Growing up, we didn't get along because I was a nerd and she was popular. She always picked on me and seemed jealous for some reason. My mom tried to help us get along, but it didn't really work. When I went to college, we didn't talk much. But after I graduated and she was a teenager, we started talking again. Our relationship got a little better, but we never got really close. That was the best we could do, and I was okay with that. Next, let me tell you about my ex-husband, Tom. We met at work and got along really well. We dated for about 3 years before getting married. We worked hard and bought our first house together. I earned more money, so the mortgage and deed were in my name. After 2 years of marriage, Tom asked me about having children. Honey, I was wondering about something, and I need you to think about this with an open mind. All right, what is it? I've been thinking that we've been together for a while now, and maybe we could start a family of our own. Tom, you know how I feel about that. I know, but we have the money for it, and it would be really cute to have little versions of us running around, don't you think? Yeah, but kids are a lot of work and responsibility. We're the most hardworking and responsible people we know. Come on, give it some thought, okay? I promise I'll help take care of them. Just keep that in mind, okay? Even though I wasn't keen on having kids, I gave in because Tom kept bringing it up. First, we had a son, and 3 years later, we had a daughter. Initially, Tom was very helpful, but that quickly changed. Suddenly, I was responsible for everything at home, including the kids. After our first child, Tom insisted I stop working because he had gotten a promotion and was earning more than me. I tried to resist, but eventually, I decided it wasn't worth the fight and accepted my new role. To avoid getting bored at home, I took up a new hobby, hosting dinners. I often invited my mom and sister, who lived nearby, and my mother-in-law, Megan, whenever she was in town. Eventually, I started to feel comfortable in my new life. I got to spend a lot of time with my family, and that made me happy. Tom and I were doing okay. I had gone through some trauma after giving birth to our second child, where I almost died, which affected our relationship. I didn't think anything else was wrong, but oh, how wrong I was. As I was cleaning my room, I found a pair of panties that definitely weren't mine. My heart sank as I stared at them, wondering if I wasn't enough for my husband. I had been feeling different lately, but I had just had our second child. It had been over a year since then, and I was still recovering. I had been going to therapy, making slow progress. But it didn't seem enough because Tom was cheating on me. Once the shock wore off, I was filled with anger and betrayal. I needed to know who my husband was cheating on me with and why. First, I sent Tom a picture of the underwear and asked him whose they were. Then, I checked his laptop. I logged into his social media accounts and went through his chats. At first, I didn't see any unknown women, which confused me more. I looked through his messages but found nothing. In my desperation, I went through every chat, even though I knew it was foolish because everyone in his contacts was someone. I couldn't believe that anyone in my life could hurt me that much. Then I realized that my sister's contact ID was everywhere I looked. At first, I didn't think much of it because why would my sister and husband talking be suspicious? But when I checked their chats, I felt sick to my stomach. They were full of pictures and videos of them in bed, messages about how much they love each other, and plans for Tom to leave me. I couldn't believe my own sister would do something so awful. Our relationship had never been perfect, but this was a whole new level of betrayal. First, I threw up because I was so disgusted. Then, I tried calling Tom, but he didn't answer. So I called my sister. Maya, hey, what's up? Don't hey, what's up me? Seriously, what's wrong with you? I don't know about mine, but I do know that I found a pair of your panties in my bedroom. Have you been sleeping with Tom? Yeah, for a while now. Why, Kayla? Seriously, you thought it was okay to sleep with my husband because you thought I was boring. And being my sister didn't even stop you. Look, I thought I was helping you out. I was keeping Tom busy so you could focus on the kids. Are you serious? That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Look, we didn't mean for it to go this far, okay? I only did it because he kept hitting on me, and he's a nice guy, Kayla. But he was my husband. Why would you help tear our family apart? I just want what's best for Tom, okay? If I'm the best for him, then so be it. You're disgusting. I hung up, unable to believe her nerve. I just lay in bed and cried. I never thought my life would come to this. Eventually, my youngest woke up crying, so I tended to her. I felt empty as I went through the motions of the day. I couldn't let my kids know something was wrong. They didn't need that worry. I picked up my older child from school, made dinner, and when they asked where their dad was, I lied and said he was working late. At some point, my anger turned into worry. It was almost 11 o'clock at night, and Tom still wasn't home. I tried calling him multiple times, but he didn't answer. I even tried calling my sister to see if he was there, but she didn't pick up either. Exhausted from the day, I went to bed, hoping it was all just a bad dream. The next morning, I woke up feeling like something was wrong. I looked around and realized Tom's things were gone from the room. I checked the cupboards and drawers, and most of his stuff was gone from the house too. He had left while I was asleep, without saying a word. I couldn't believe it. He just left me without even trying to talk. I didn't know what to do. All I could think about was taking care of my kids first. Then, I'd figure out everything else. I woke up, got the kids ready, dropped off the oldest at school, and then took the youngest to my mom's place. She could tell something was off because I was distant. All I could think about was how I'd managed to raise 2 kids alone. Whenever I came back to reality, I remember I had to tell my mom about my sister and husband. Eventually, she couldn't wait any longer and asked what was wrong. "Okay, I've had enough of your silence. What's going on? I don't know how to say this. Why don't you start from the beginning?" "Well, I found out that Tom has been cheating on me." "What? How do you know?" "I found another woman's underwear in our room. When I asked Tom about it, he didn't answer and then left." "He left? What do you mean?" "When I woke up this morning, all his things were gone." "Gone? You didn't try to stop him?" "I didn't even realize when he came back. I fell asleep around midnight, and when I woke up, all his stuff was gone." "Oh my God, my poor girl, I'm so sorry this happened." "Yeah, it gets worse." "Oh no, what happened? Do you know who Tom cheated on you with?" "You mean you know who he cheated with?" "Yeah, I snooped through his things to find out. I wouldn't have tolerated this under normal circumstances, but this is different." "So, who is it?" "Maya." "Excuse me? What? Are you serious?" "Yeah, my husband has been cheating on me with my own sister." I called her to ask about it, and she was so casual about it. She said they were in love, and she believed she was the best for him, so she was going to keep being with him. Oh my God, what has Maya done? I don't even know how I'm going to survive. I have 2 kids to raise and I need to find a job too. Look, why don't you just get some rest while I try to process this? I'll be here to help you, okay? Yeah, okay, thanks Mom. I had become numb to everything that had happened, so telling my mom wasn't as hard as I thought. I ended up sleeping while my mom took care of my youngest. When I woke up, I heard my baby crying and my mom yelling. I rushed out and saw my mom on the phone looking angry. She hung up and seemed surprised to see me. She apologized for the noise but didn't say more. I knew she had been giving Maya a piece of her mind. Over the next few days, Mom stayed with us. It was easier having one person move and then 3. Maya kept trying to contact our mom, but she asked me to block Maya. It was comforting to have someone understand my feelings when I felt so alone. I found out through mutual friends that Tom and Maya got married. They reached out to me, concerned and confused. I had to explain everything, which was humiliating, but they were supportive. They all blocked Tom and Maya and refused to associate with them. But I found out they got married the day after Tom left us. It hurt to know, but I shouldn't have expected anything different from them. When I told my mom, she was furious. You should know, my mom is usually calm, so seeing her so angry with my sister was surprising. It was great to have her financial support. She wasn't obligated to help, but she did her best for us. She even helped me get job interviews because I wanted to contribute now that Tom wasn't there to stop me. Taking care of the kids was manageable, but when they asked about Tom, I had to hold back tears. Still, we got through it. A week later, I got a letter from Tom. I didn't want anything to do with it. I figured it was some apology, but I was done with him. A week was too long to try to fix things, especially after he ran away from his family. So I did the next best thing I could think of. I burned the letter. But afterward, I couldn't help but be curious about what it said. Sometimes I wished I had read it before burning it, but then I reminded myself that nothing he could have said would change how I felt about him and what he did. The next day, my mom and I took the kids to the fair. We had a blast, and it was nice to be in a lively place after everything. I finally got to have fun and laugh, which felt great after such a tough time. That night, my mom and I relaxed with a bottle of wine, and I told her about the letter. So something came in the mail for me last night. Oh, what was it? It was a letter from Tham. What? What did it say? I don't know. What do you mean? You opened it, right? No, I didn't want to deal with anything he had to say, so I burned it. You burned it? Kayla, what if they were official divorce papers? The envelope didn't look legal at all. I'm sure it wasn't that. Well, if you're sure. What do you think was in it? I don't know. Maybe a weak apology or a request for his stuff back. I wouldn't be surprised. But how are you feeling about all of this now? Well, today was a good day. It's tough, especially when the kids keep asking where their dad is. What do I even tell them? It's slowly getting better, but only a little. As long as it's improving. I'm always here for you, and just so you know, I'm planning to cut ties with your sister. Everything I have will go to you and the kids. Oh Mom, that means a lot. But are you sure? Maya is still your daughter. I know you and Maya had your differences, but what she did is unforgivable. I raised both of you better than this, and Maya clearly didn't care. So she's no longer my daughter. I would have been upset if Mom changed her mind easily, but I knew Maya was still her child. I couldn't imagine how hard it must have been for Mom to make that decision, because I could never do that to my kids. It made me even more grateful to have someone so supportive. Another 3 days passed, and I heard a knock on the door. It was strange because I wasn't expecting anyone, and besides my mom, who was at work, no one ever visited. I opened the door cautiously and saw 2 men in black suits. I only opened the door a little and asked who they were. They said they were lawyers and had something for me. They handed me a note and then a check. It was made out to me, and it was for $750,000. My jaw dropped when I saw the amount. I tried to tell them there must be a mistake, but they said there wasn't and urged me to read the note. The note began with, "Thank you for saving me." As I read on, I realized the money was from my mother-in-law, Megan. She explained that she had visited us 3 days ago, but no one was home. She called Tom, who tried to make it seem like he couldn't get in, but I had changed the locks after he left. Megan sensed something was wrong with Tom's behavior and pressed him until he confessed everything. She was disgusted by his actions. Megan felt sorry for what I had gone through and decided to leave all her inheritance to me and her grandkids. She thanked me for preventing her from making a mistake and for not trusting her son with her assets. That's what the check was for. The lawyers then told me that Megan had been terminally ill and had passed away just the day before. She wanted me to have the money right after her death to ensure her daughter-in-law and grandkids were well taken care of. Tears filled my eyes at Megan's kindness and loss. She was truly remarkable, always standing up for what was right. It was one of the reasons Tom had always been afraid of her. Yet I found her comforting. She stayed true to her word and supported me until her last breath. A few days later, Tom called. I already knew what he was going to say, but I decided to hear him out. What did you do? What do you mean? You know exactly what I mean, Tom. You'll have to be more specific. What are you talking about? Why weren't you home that day? I specifically asked you to be. I sent you a letter asking you to pretend everything was normal while my mom visited. Oh, is that what the letter said? You didn't read it. No, I burned it. You betrayed me. My mother was going to help me with the inheritance, but you took it all because you're selfish. That's ironic coming from you. You abandoned your family and only cared about contacting me when it involved your inheritance. Love can't be forced. I did what was best for me, and your mother did what was best for us. Don't ever try to contact me or the kids again. Goodbye. After that, things moved quickly. I filed for divorce, and I was granted full custody of the kids. Tom tried to fight for the inheritance, but Megan had made it clear that I was the one to receive it, so he didn't succeed. Tom and Maya tried to pressure me into giving them some of the money, but I stood my ground and refused. Life has become easier since we got the money. I put a portion aside for my kids' college and invested the rest. My mom could retire, and I started working. My kids have come to terms with their dad not coming back, and when they're older, I'll tell them everything. I'm still hurting, but I know things can only get better from here.
My name is Clara, a 32-year-old woman who, once a firm believer in fairy tale endings, saw her life take an unexpected turn 3 years ago when I met Mark, the man who would eventually become my husband. Our story unfolds as a journey of love, trust, and eventual betrayal against the backdrop of what seemed like a perfect marriage. It all began on an ordinary Tuesday morning when fate led me to the Corner Cafe, a John Grisham novel in hand, lost in the world of legal thrillers. That's when Mark entered, immediately noticeable with an air of confidence and a warmth in his smile that felt inviting. "Hey, is that Grisham's latest?" he asked, nodding towards my book, his friendly voice tinged with genuine curiosity. "Yeah, just started it. He's always a good read," I responded, pleasantly surprised by the ease of our conversation. We delved into discussions about our favorite authors, and our conversation flowed effortlessly. In the weeks that followed, Mark and I grew closer. Our shared interests in music, particularly old jazz, and a mutual love for exploring hidden bookstores around the city cemented our bond. Mark was charming, respectful, and attentive, and each encounter felt like catching up with an old friend. One evening, as we walked along the river, Mark's tone turned serious. "Clara, I've never felt this way before. I think I'm falling for you," he confessed under the dim glow of the streetlights. His words sent a rush of warmth through me, and I admitted, "I feel the same, Mark. You're unlike anyone I've ever met." 6 months flew by, and our relationship only grew stronger. During a cozy dinner at my apartment, Mark proposed, and there was no hesitation in my yes. I loved him, and I believed in our future together. The joy of our engagement, however, was soon met with apprehension as the time came to meet Mark's parents. His mother, Linda, was a stern woman with piercing eyes that seemed to judge my every move, while his father was more amiable but carried an undeniable seriousness, especially regarding the institution of marriage. During a formal dinner at their house, Mark's father brought up the subject of a prenuptial agreement. "It's just practical," he stated matter-of-factly. The request caught me off guard, but given my past experience with a cheating ex-boyfriend, I understood the necessity. "I agree, but I have a condition," I said, steadying my voice. "If either of us cheats, the cheater owes the other $100,000. Mark's expression was a mix of surprise and respect. "I promise, Clara, I'd never cheat on you," he said earnestly. Our wedding was a beautiful affair, filled with laughter, dancing, and promises of forever. The first year of our marriage felt like living in a dream. We traveled to romantic destinations, enjoyed quiet evenings at home, and supported each other's ambitions. Mark was not just my husband. He was my best friend and confidant. After the whirlwind of our wedding, Mark and I settled into married life with an ease that surprised even me. Our first year was like living in a bubble of happiness, untouched by the outside world. Our honeymoon in Paris was a dream, strolling along the Seine as two lovebirds lost in a city of love. "Can you believe we're here?" I inquired of Mark one evening as we observed the Eiffel Tower lighting up. He drew me close and responded, "With you, I can believe anything. This is just the start for us, Clara." Those days were filled with laughter, romantic dinners, and promises of a shared future. Returning home with a suitcase full of memories, our bond felt unbreakable. In our daily routine, Mark would bid me farewell each morning before work, and I'd have dinner waiting for him upon his return. Our conversations stretched late into the night, discussing everything and nothing. One night, while cleaning up after dinner, Mark remarked, "You know, I never thought I'd be this happy doing mundane stuff like washing dishes." I playfully splashed water at him, and he laughed, catching it in his hands. "That's because you've got an amazing wife. It's all about good company," he said. "Absolutely the best decision of my life marrying you." Despite the growing pressure from external expectations, particularly the anticipation of starting a family, our happiness persisted. Linda, Mark's mother, would drop not-so-subtle hints at family gatherings, asking, "So when are we going to hear some good news?" I brushed it off with a joke, but her persistence strained me over time. Mark reassured me, saying, "Don't let my mom get to you. We'll start a family when we're ready, not minutes sooner." Our first year of marriage was magical, celebrated with a quiet dinner at home. Mark surprised me with a necklace I had admired months ago. "Happy anniversary, Clara. Here's to many more years of happiness," he said, his eyes shining with love. As we cuddled on the couch that night, I felt incredibly fortunate. However, as our second year of marriage began, the pressure from Mark's family, particularly Linda, took a toll. It wasn't just about starting a family. Her criticisms infiltrated every aspect of our lives. Linda's disapproval, often hidden in seemingly helpful comments, turned every visit into a nightmare. One afternoon, as I set the table for lunch, Linda walked into the kitchen, eyeing the spread with a disapproving frown. "Is this what you're serving? A bit simple, don't you think?" she remarked, her tone dripping with disdain. Clenching my jaw, I tried to maintain composure. Her critiques extended beyond my cooking, finding fault in everything from house decorations to how I spent my free time. One evening, relaxing in the living room, Linda gave her unsolicited opinion, stating, "You know, Clara, if Mark gave me the money he spends on you." I contemplated hiring a proper cleaner and cook. Mark appeared uncomfortable, but he remained silent. His quiet response felt like a betrayal, and though seething with frustration, I managed to say, "Well, Linda, I'm doing my best here." The hurt intensified as Mark's attitude began to mirror his mother's criticisms, albeit in a more subtle manner. Following one of Linda's visits, Mark casually suggested, "Mom might have a point about the house. Maybe we should consider getting some help." A pang of hurt and frustration hit me, and I questioned, "So you think I can't handle it either?" He backpedaled, saying, "No, that's not what I meant." But the damage was done. Constant criticisms and Mark's growing detachment strained our marriage, leading to arguments over trivial matters and transforming our once easy conversations into tense exchanges. After a particularly heated argument, I found myself wondering aloud, "What happened to us, Mark? We used to be on the same team." He ran a hand through his hair, looking frustrated, and replied, "I don't know, Clara. Everything feels so complicated now." That night, I went to bed feeling lonely and misunderstood. Linda's insidious comments had invaded not only our home, but also our marriage, making me question whether the love Mark and I shared could withstand this constant barrage of negativity. As the third year of our marriage unfolded, a sense of unease settled in my heart. The once bright flame of our love seemed to flicker under the shadow of doubt and distrust. It all started with repeated phone calls from a name that kept popping up on Mark's phone, Jake. Mark's demeanor changed whenever that name flashed on the screen. One evening, as we watched TV, his phone rang again, and I couldn't help but notice the nervous glance he threw my way. "Who's Jake?" I asked, trying to sound casual, but my heart pounded. "Just a new guy at work, no one important," Mark replied, but his voice was too nonchalant, and his answer seemed rehearsed. Mark's behavior continued to shift. He started coming home late from work with flimsy and inconsistent excuses. His wardrobe underwent a transformation, shifting from casual to sharply tailored suits. One night, as he prepared to leave for another late night at work, I questioned, "Working late again?" noticing his dressed-up appearance. "Yeah, big project," he said without meeting my eyes. "Don't wait up." Frustration boiled over, and I confronted him one day, saying, "This isn't like you, Mark. What's really going on?" My voice trembled with a mixture of anger and fear. Mark sighed, displaying a mix of guilt and annoyance. "I told you, it's just work. Why can't you trust me?" I shot back, "Because you're hiding something. You're never here, and when you are, it's like you're a million miles away." Mark didn't respond. He just grabbed his coat and left, leaving me standing there feeling more alone than ever. That night, lying in our empty bed, I made a decision. I couldn't live in this limbo of doubt and suspicion. I needed to know the truth, whatever it was. The next morning, I called a private detective. It felt like a betrayal, but the constant worry and uncertainty were eating me alive. I needed answers and was determined to get them, no matter what they revealed about the man I thought I knew. The days after contacting the private detective were a haze of anxiety and anticipation. I felt like I walked a tightrope, desperately trying to maintain a semblance of normalcy while my world quietly crumbled around me. Then the call came, shattering my last hope. "Mrs. Johnson, we have conclusive evidence. I'm afraid your suspicions were correct." The detective's voice was solemn, heavy with the weight of the news he was delivering. He explained that Mark had been having an affair, and the mysterious Jake on his phone was actually a woman. My heart sank as he detailed their meetings, providing timestamps and photos. It was irrefutable. I sat there, phone in hand, feeling a mix of devastation and vindication. My worst fears weren't just fears anymore. They were cold, hard facts. Despite the pain, I decided not to confront Mark immediately. I needed more than just the evidence of his infidelity. I needed to understand the full extent of his deceit. One evening, as I passed by his home office, I overheard a conversation that chilled me to the bone. Mark was talking to his mother, Linda. "Mom, I'm planning to end it with Clara after your birthday." Mark's voice was cold, devoid of any affection he once had for me. "Oh, that's wise, dear. Make sure she gets me a nice 65th birthday present before you drop the bomb," Linda replied, her voice laced with a callousness that took my breath away. I leaned against the wall, feeling nauseous. Not only was my husband unfaithful, but he and his mother were plotting against me, waiting to use me for one last expensive gift before discarding me. Fueled by a mixture of anger and resolve, I decided to play along. I continued as if nothing was wrong while secretly gathering more evidence of Mark's infidelity. The detective provided me with everything: photos, videos, and even audio recordings. I was building my case, preparing for the moment I would strike back. As I lay in bed each night next to the man who had betrayed me, a plan began to form in my mind. I would wait until after Linda's birthday. I would give them the illusion of victory. Let them think they had outsmarted me. But when they least expected it, I would reveal everything and turn the tables. As Linda's 65th birthday approached, I put on a mask of ignorance, acting as though everything was normal. Inside, I was a cauldron of emotions: anger, betrayal, and a fierce determination to see my plan through. A few days before the birthday, Linda casually mentioned her upcoming celebration during a family dinner. "So, Clara, I'm expecting a grand 65th birthday. You must have planned something special for me," she said with a sly smile, clearly anticipating a lavish gift. Keeping my emotions in check, I replied with faint enthusiasm, "Of course, Linda. I've arranged a dinner at the city's most luxurious restaurant. It'll be a night to remember." Her eyes lit up with glee, not realizing the trap I was setting. "How wonderful! I can't wait. Just a small family gathering, right?" she asked. "Yes, very intimate and exclusive. Just for close family," I confirmed, my words laced with hidden irony. Later that night, Mark approached me, a hint of suspicion in his voice. "That's quite a generous plan for Mom's birthday. Are you sure about this?" I looked at him, maintaining my composure. "Absolutely. It's a significant birthday, and I want to do something special for her." Mark seemed appeased, but I could tell he was puzzled by my willingness to indulge his mother. As the day of the dinner drew near, I managed the final arrangements meticulously, confirming the booking under Linda's name, double-checking the guest list, and ensuring everything was in place for the grand evening. Playing the role of the dutiful wife and daughter-in-law, I concealed my true intentions beneath a facade, ready to expose the betrayal and deceit that had corroded our marriage. The night before the dinner, as I lay in bed, a twisted sense of satisfaction enveloped me. I was mere hours away from turning the tables on Mark and Linda. They believed they were using me for one last benefit before discarding me, unaware that I held the reins of the game. The evening of Linda's 65th birthday unfolded in a luxurious restaurant, every detail meticulously planned to reflect the grandeur of the occasion. While Linda reveled in the opulence, I played the part of the gracious daughter-in-law, masking my inner turmoil with a practiced smile. As the dinner drew to a close, the waiter presented the bill, a hefty $4,500. With a steady hand, I reached for my card, my heart pounding. After swiping the card, I glanced around the table, observing Linda's satisfied smirk and Mark's uneasy expression. "Thank you for such a wonderful evening, Clara. This is truly generous," Linda said, her voice dripping with insincerity. Seizing the moment, Mark leaned in with a mocking tone. "By the way, Clara, I want a divorce." His words struck me like a physical blow, but I refused to let them see my pain. Linda chimed in sharply. "Well then, I guess you should leave. This is a family gathering after all." Without a word, I stood up and left the restaurant, my dignity intact despite the turmoil inside. As I walked away, I swiftly canceled the payment on my phone and blocked the shared account, ensuring Mark couldn't cover the cost either. Back at home, I packed my belongings quickly, the finality of my actions setting in. I was leaving this chapter of my life behind, stepping into an uncertain but hopeful future. Soon, my phone erupted with calls. I answered, and Linda's voice, shrill with rage and panic, filled my ears. The payment didn't go through. The restaurant staff called the police. "What have you done?" Her words were a cacophony of anger and disbelief, but I remained silent, letting her tirade wash over me. This was their doing, their betrayal and manipulation coming back to haunt them. After hanging up, I looked around the empty house, once filled with dreams and love, now just a hollow shell. I took a deep breath, stepped out the door, and didn't look back. Their calls continued, desperate pleas for help that I no longer felt obliged to answer. I had closed that chapter of my life for good. In the end, they paid. Mark had to borrow from his parents, but I didn't care where the money came from. It was a small compensation for the betrayal, but more importantly, it was closure. Sitting in the lawyer's office, signing the last of the papers, I felt a sense of peace. The journey had been painful, full of betrayal and heartache. But I had come out stronger, more resilient. Walking out into the sunlight, I felt like a free woman ready to start anew. The future was uncertain, but it was mine to shape. After all the darkness, I finally felt like I was stepping into the light.
Things have changed since Lily was born. I used to see Mark's face light up whenever I entered a room, but now I'm lucky to get more than a grunt before he dives back into his phone. His job hasn't changed. If anything, it's less stressful than before, but something in him switched off the day we brought her home. Another painting. That makes 3 this week. Mark's voice sliced through the air, sharp and critical, whenever he caught me setting up my easel. He used to admire my work. He even had my best piece framed in his office. Not anymore. "It's not like I'm spending your money," I replied, trying to hide the tremble in my hands as I focused on mixing blues and yellows on my palette. Each word felt like a punch to my gut. "Could have fooled me. Look at this place. It's a disaster," he snapped, scanning the room, his eyes zeroing in on every toy and blanket out of place as if they were evidence of my failures. "I'm with Lily all day, and she's a handful," I fought back, my voice wavering. "Maybe if you helped a little around here." "Help with what? You're home all the time. You deal with it. That was our deal, remember? I make the money, you handle the rest." "Not my fault you can't manage." He cut me off, leaving no room for argument. Every night ended the same way, with him turning away, dismissing me with a scoff. As he left for work, Lily would tug at the hem of my shirt, her little eyes wide with confusion. "Daddy mad?" she'd ask, her tiny lips quivering. "No, baby, Daddy just has a lot on his mind," I'd reassure her, pulling her into my arms and trying to smile for her sake. "Here, help Mommy choose the colors." Together, we'd paint, her laughter drowning out the bitterness in Mark's tone, creating a world of color that felt like a refuge. I knew my paintings were good, not out of arrogance, but because they were the last remnants of a time when I felt confident and vibrant. That evening, when Mark came home, I did what I always did, greeted him with a warm dinner, a clean house, and Lily, squeaky clean from her bath and dressed in her best pajamas. "Hey," I said, the aroma of roast chicken following me as I approached. "How was your day?" He grunted in reply, shrugging off his coat and tossing it onto the couch. His gaze caught mine, then fell on the easel in the corner of our living room. "Still haven't gotten rid of that junk, huh?" "It's not junk, Mark. I'm working on something," I responded, wariness seeping into my tone. "Looks like a waste of time and money. You could be doing something productive," he said, walking past me to the fridge without waiting for an answer. Productive, it seemed, meant anything that made money or made his life easier. I guess I was doing neither to his liking. "I'm doing something," I said, my voice firmer now. "I'm raising our daughter and trying to hold on to something that matters to me. My painting matters to me." He didn't even pause, just opened a beer and took a deep swig. "Call it what you want, Grace. To me, it looks like you're just filling time and making a mess. I'll have to pay someone to clean it up." The sting didn't come from the unkindness of his words. I was getting used to that. It came from the dismissal of my dreams and passion. There was no place for them in Mark's world anymore. "Dinner's ready," I called out, feeling like I was putting on a performance. I stood there with trembling hands as I served the meal. Mark's parents, seated like judges at the head of the table, barely noticing my effort to create a warm, hearty meal. Their eyes were fixed on the easel by the window. "What's this then?" Mark's dad, George, a broad man with a booming voice, jabbed a finger toward my unfinished painting. "Oh, that's just something Grace has been fooling around with," Mark chuckled, waving a dismissive hand before taking his seat. "Real high-class stuff, right?" Laughter rang out, but it felt like a knife cutting at my nerves, laughter that didn't reach their eyes. My, we have an artist now, do we?" Mark's mom, Patricia, chimed in, her voice sharp enough to slice steel. "Why don't you show us your latest masterpiece, dear?" George bellowed, his smile more of a challenge than a gesture of interest. I stood frozen in place, heat creeping up my neck. "It's not done yet," I muttered, but Mark was already striding over to the canvas, grabbing it with far less care than he'd use for a dish towel. "Look at this, folks." Mark laughed, flipping the canvas around like he was unveiling a letter on Wheel of Fortune. "It's supposed to be a landscape. Can you believe it?" George's laughter boomed again. "Looks like a blind dog's nightmare," Patricia tutted, shaking her head, her nostrils flaring with each derisive comment. "Why waste your time with this hobby? Get a job or do something, anything, productive. As if any place would hire me." Mark snorted, setting the painting back down with a thud that sank my heart. "The job market's tough out there, and well, look at her." I swallowed hard, my hands clenched into fists at my sides. "I do plenty. I take care of Lily and this house." My words faltered under their collective gaze. Patricia poked at the food on her plate with a fork, as if she suspected it might be poisoned. "Taking care of your family is the least you can do," she sniffed. "But honestly, Mark, if you'd married someone with a little ambition..." They continued tearing into me, their words pressing down, squeezing the air from my lungs. I felt myself slipping away, becoming smaller and more insignificant in this grand performance of theirs. Something inside me snapped as soon as the meal ended. With a fiend smile, I excused myself, marched up the stairs without looking back, and locked myself in the bedroom. "Grace," Mark called, his voice rising up the stairs about half an hour later. "You coming back down? We need to clear the table." I didn't respond. I couldn't. If I opened my mouth, a scream or a sob would escape, and I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of witnessing my breakdown. I scrolled through my banking app, a frown deepening the lines on my face. Our account was looking dire again this month, and the grocery list wasn't getting any shorter. Lily needed new shoes too. She was sprouting like a weed. "Grace, why is there a charge for $48.95 for Martin's art supplies?" Mark's voice tumbled in from the living room. "I just picked up a few things," I said, tapping through the app to transfer what little remained of my personal savings to cover it. "I needed those supplies." "Come on, Grace, that's money we could have put towards something important." His tone was flat, almost bored, but with an undercurrent of something else. Was it disappointment? Frustration? "Art is important to me, Mark, the same way your golf is important to you." I did mention that his golf clubs cost more than a year's worth of my supplies. "Yeah, but golf is networking. It's part of my job. What does your painting get us? A cluttered house and wasted cash?" It gets me through the day, I murmured, feeling that familiar tug of war in my chest. Mark snorted. We have to be smart about money, not just spend it on whatever gets us through the day. Budget, Grace. That word felt like a choke chain. I pay for my art supplies with my own money. Money I had before. My voice trailed off, not wanting to spark another fight. That money felt like a distant chapter, one that held job independence and a once-shared dream of my own gallery. Your money's our money, isn't it? He shot back, the implication that my financial independence was a thing of the past evident in his tone. And that money is running out fast. Later, at the store, I opted for the cheaper brands, counting every cent, every compromise. I picked up the smallest tubes of paint, the ones I could slip into the cart without drawing any raised eyebrows. Back home, I unpacked the bags with robotic precision, each item a reminder of our tightrope walk over financial ruin. Putting back some luxuries, are we? Mark commented, his gaze landing on the no-name cereal and store-brand pasta. Yes. Tightening the belt, I answered without looking at him, concealing the receipts, a paper trail of my crimes. He rummaged through the bags like an investigator searching for a slip-up. Where are the Greek yogurts you like? Isn't this the cheap coffee? I shrugged, busying myself with placing a can of tomatoes in the pantry. Prices went up, had to make some cuts. Don't see any cuts in your art budget though, he said, his cold finger pointing out the new brushes I had tucked under a loaf of bread. I turned to him, finally meeting his gaze for the first time since the conversation started. This keeps me sane, Mark. My art keeps me sane. My voice was firm, and I clenched my fists around the countertop to stop the tremor in my hand. Well, sanity's quite the luxury item these days, isn't it? He said, nodding toward the brushes, his words deliberate and biting. That night, I painted not out of passion, but frustration. Each stroke felt like a challenge. A cut from our already strained budget to fit within Mark's expectations. But as I worked, I remembered a time when these brushes brought me joy, not the feeling of having to defend myself. Mark was somewhere across the country, tangled up in business meetings when he dropped the latest task on me. His voice buzzed through my phone, sounding distracted as if he was already halfway out the door. Grace, you've got to put together a birthday present for my boss's wife, Clara. Her big day's in a week. Okay, do you have any cash set aside for that? I asked, squinting at our already tight budget displayed on my laptop screen. Nah, you figure it out, just make it look like we put some thought into it, he muttered, sounding preoccupied. Hang on, you want something nice. But I'm supposed to magic up the funds for it. I could feel heat rising in my cheeks. You always find a way to make it happen, Grace. With that cheerful little line, he was gone. I exhaled slowly, closing my eyes as I fought to push back the frustration gnawing at my last nerve. I didn't have the cash, but I needed something that would truly impress Clara. No pressure, right? After diving deep into her online world, it was clear she had a passion for art. Her feed was filled with gallery visits and photos of canvases that probably cost more than our car. She even posted pictures with artists talking about supporting the arts, patronage, and all that jazz. An idea sparked in my mind, and I grabbed it before it could slip away. A painting from me. I had the paints, I had the canvas, and I definitely had the motivation. I wanted to give Clara something unique, something you couldn't find on any high street. I let the concept settle in my mind, picturing the brush strokes and feeling the drag of bristles against canvas. It would be personal, and best of all, it would be free. Decision made. I knew I'd need every minute of every day if I wanted it to resemble the kind of art Clara admired. I pulled out my old easel, set it up in the living room, and got to work, all the while hoping my little slice of creativity would hold up in the high-stakes arena of business birthday gifts. Day 1. Operation Bombshell. I found myself standing in the middle of my makeshift studio, a corner of the dining room I cleared by pushing the table against the wall. The morning light streamed in, illuminating the chaos of art supplies scattered around. Mommy, what's all this? Lily, my 6-year-old, plopped herself right in the middle of the mess, her eyes wide as saucers, mirroring the splattered paint on the floor. Mommy's making a birthday present, sweetie, I replied, rifling through old brushes with bristles stiffer than my back. For a lady Daddy works with, she asked, picking up a brush and examining the crusty edges like a little professional. I snatched the brush from her before it turned into a makeshift sword or fairy wand. Yes, but I needed to stay nice, I explained. Lily furrowed her brow in confusion. But why can't Daddy just buy something? Lily, go watch your cartoons, okay? I need to think. I wasn't ready to unpack the complexities of our bank account or my marriage with a kindergartner. Burbling something under her breath that sounded far too much like me, she trotted off to the living room, leaving me to my dilemma. The week dragged on, and I found myself pulling double shifts. Daytime mommy, nighttime Picasso. Slowly, the canvas began to fill, taking on a life of its own. Something abstract, something that captured the whirlwind of my life lately. I didn't hear a peep from Mark, not a check-in call or even a text asking how things were going. I guess he was too wrapped up in his charts, deals, and whatever else was too important to bother his wife. Lily, on the other hand, was my tiny shadow, always creeping back to watch me paint. "You're really good, Mommy," she said, now on day 4. "You should draw stuff more." I smiled. That was probably the best review I'd ever receive. "Think so, huh? Maybe I will." The night before the big reveal, the painting finally stared back at me, complete. It wasn't just art. It was everything I hadn't been able to say or do, all poured onto the canvas. But I couldn't sleep that night, tossing and turning, my thoughts spiraling. What if Clara hated it? What if Mark thought I'd wasted my time? Morning arrived clear and bright, and the painting was wrapped, not in fancy paper, just brown parcel paper, neatly tied with a bow made from Lily's hair ribbons. Why not? At the boss's wife's birthday bash, I held the package tightly, hoping the painting would be a hit. I slid through the crowd, eyes down, wishing I could blend into the wallpaper. Mark was there, just foaming hot from his latest trip, looking every inch the man who had it all, except the picture-perfect trophy wife. His eyes swept over the polished women in their cocktail dresses before landing on me, and it felt like a ton of bricks had dropped. I saw that look on his face as if he'd just bitten into a lemon. He glanced me up and down and shook his head just enough for only me to notice. The room faded slightly, like someone turned down the volume on the party, leaving me with the sound of my heartbeat pounding in my ears. Then his gaze zeroed in on a package cradled in my trembling hands. His eyes flashed, and oh boy, I recognized that look. I sensed the storm brewing before he even spoke. "What's that?" he spat, barely keeping his anger in check. I pulled the package closer, as if I could shield it and myself from the impending fallout. "It's a gift. My painting," I said, my words barely hanging in the air before he cut me off. "A painting? You're kidding, right?" His voice was loud enough to catch a few glances our way. I tried to shush him with my eyes, but he was beyond caring. "You actually think it's okay to hand her a piece of amateur hour?" Whispers began to swirl around us, soft at first, but growing stronger. "Mark, please, not here," I begged, my cheeks burning. "Did you lose your mind?" he roared. And the room didn't just pause, it froze. "You're making us look like fools." By now, we were the main event. Eyes flicked to us, then away, then back again, as if they were watching a tense game of tennis. I shrank, wishing I could melt into the floorboards. Mark's face was a shade of red I'd only seen on traffic lights. "Just great." "Grace," he vented, throwing his hands up. "You don't think, do you?" The heat flooding my cheeks told me I was blushing, and not in a cute way. My hands shook, but I clutched the painting tighter. What else could I hold on to? I took a deep breath, trying to remember why I thought this was a good idea. "Now everyone's going to have a go at us, thanks to you and your dumb idea," he added, his words sharp as a knife, aimed at anyone pretending not to listen. My mouth opened, words ready to tumble out to defend myself or maybe just to tell him to shut up. But what could I say with the entire room's eyes burning into us? Instead, I just stood there, the fool, he called me, wishing the ground would swallow me whole. The laughter that followed Mark's outburst felt like daggers. Even as the room spun, I caught the boss's eye. He was watching quietly, confusion etched on his face. Clara wore a half-concerned, half-intrigued frown, which gave me a sliver of hope. She waved her hand, cutting through the noise. "Quiet down, everyone. Let's see what Grace has brought." I moved on autopilot, my hands still jittery as they tore away the wrapping paper. The art spilled into the room, all the colors and shapes I had poured myself into for nights. Clara's eyebrows shot up. "Oh my," she said, and the room hushed, waiting for her judgment. "This is quite something, Grace." Mark was still fuming by my side. "Yeah, something all right." I ignored him, searching Clara's face for any sign of approval. "It's for you. Happy birthday." She tilted her head, studying the painting like it was a puzzle. "It's bold. I like bold. Don't you, darling?" She nudged Mark, pulling him into this. The boss was tough to read, but he nodded. Don't see something like that every day. Mark tried to jump back in. Oh, come on, you're saying you like this mess? Clara's voice snapped as she turned to him with a squint. Mark, I'd watch it if I were you. Your wife has talent, and I won't have you embarrass her any further. It's unbecoming. The room fell into a tense silence, the kind where you could hear a sneeze 3 houses down. Look at the colors, the feeling in it, Clara continued. Now it's got life. Mark attempted a save. Well, sure, if you like that sort of thing. But Clara cut him off. I do. It's decided. This goes right in the foyer. I blinked. Was this actually happening? You sure, babe? The boss chimed in. It's not exactly. Clara shot him a look, and he trailed off. Standard? Right, it's unique. She extended her arm toward me like a beacon in her high heels and overpriced suit. See? Thank you, Grace. This here's a real gift, folks. It's got soul. Just like that, the murmurs started up again. But this time, they were different. People were nodding, some even looking at me with what felt like respect. Clara still held my painting like it was a treasure, turning her eyes back to me. So, Grace, she said, drawing the room's focus, ever thought about showing your work in a gallery? Mark let out a scoff. I heard it, but my eyes were glued to Clara. Nah, who'd want to see my stuff? Don't worry, Grace, I would, and I know people. Clara's voice was firm, her eyes sharp. Mark tried to laugh it off. Come on, Clara, she's just dabbling. Clara quirked an eyebrow at him. So she dabbles better than some pros I know. What's it to you? I swallowed, feeling like I was teetering on the edge of something big. I don't know. I've never. What's to know? You jump in, I'll help. Clara's look was commanding, not asking. A nervous giggle slipped from my lips, wild-sounding even to my own ears. Sure. Good. It's settled, then. After that, whispers flitted around like moths to a flame. People who barely gave me the time of day were now hanging on my arm, talking about my work. It felt surreal, like walking through someone else's life. Mark was suddenly there again, his hand on my back, almost scalding. You're not serious about this, are you? There was an edge in his voice, like a knife threatening to cut. I turned to him, feeling the weight of the crowd and the pull of something new. Yeah, I am. My voice was stronger than it had felt in years. He looked at me, really looked at me for the first time that night. But what about us? What about us? I repeated. We've been over for longer than I want to admit. That shook him. He stepped back. I thought we were fine. I turned to face him fully. You thought wrong. The words were colder than I intended, but they needed to be said. Mark ran a hand through his hair, looking defeated. So what? We just end it. I glanced down at the colors splash across my fingers at the rings that no longer meant what they were supposed to. We ended it a long time ago. Now we're just making it official. He didn't have anything to say to that. I watched him walk away, shoulders hunched. Clara's hand touched my shoulder. You okay, hon? I nodded. I am, thanks to you. She winked. What are friends for, right? And you, Grace, she paused, squeezing my shoulder. You're going to light up this town with your art. Just you wait. With that, I felt my heart start to hammer for a whole new set of reasons. Ahead of me, there wasn't just an ending. There was a beginning, painted in the boldest colors I could imagine. Lily and I. We'd be more than fine. We'd be us. Unapologetically, unfalteringly us. Hello, my name is Donna. I'm a 38-year-old woman who has recently freed myself from an oppressive marriage. Let me tell you, separating from my husband felt like stepping into a new realm of freedom. My ex-husband, Michael, and I initially met through a blind date set up by a mutual friend. From the start, I was captivated by his striking looks and magnetic charm. Michael seemed to possess all the qualities I desired in a partner. We shared numerous interests, and our conversations flowed effortlessly. For the first 7 months, we enjoyed casual dating, taking turns organizing fun and engaging activities. Once we officially became a couple, we continued our dynamic outings, and after a year, we moved in together. During that time, I learned about Michael's financial struggles. Despite my attempts to offer guidance to help him advance in his career, he rarely took my advice seriously. Still, he managed to earn enough to meet his needs, and I was willing to support both of us financially. 3 years into our relationship, we tied the knot, and a year later, we decided to buy a house. I secured the mortgage solely in my name due to my superior credit score, a choice I now regard as particularly fortunate. However, 4 years into our marriage, I began to notice a troubling shift in Michael's behavior. He grew increasingly demanding and stopped contributing to household chores, claiming he was too busy with work. Despite my understanding and efforts to manage everything on my own, the burden became overwhelming. When I confronted Michael about this, he would momentarily promise to change, but we quickly fell back into our old patterns. This was frustrating, yet I tolerated it out of love and a desire to fully support him. Unfortunately, our relationship began to suffer, especially in terms of fun and leisure, as I simply didn't have the time or energy for either. It was under these strange circumstances that I discovered Michael's infidelity. I stumbled upon the truth quite unexpectedly when he left his phone unlocked while he took a shower. I had no intention of snooping. I just wanted to charge his phone. But a notification caught my eye, a message from a woman named Isabella, asking Michael how long it would be until he left his pathetic wife to meet her at a nearby motel. The shock and heartbreak hit me like a tidal wave. I couldn't believe Michael was capable of such betrayal. Our marriage had seemed solid. He always greeted me warmly, and we rarely argued. The pain was overwhelming, a gut-wrenching mix of sorrow and nausea as my world crumbled. Yet, at that moment, I knew I had to confront this head-on. I left Michael's phone exactly as I found it, with the message still open, ensuring he would know I had seen it when he returned. When Michael emerged from the shower and saw his phone, the realization hit him. He tried to avoid the conversation, but I was determined to address it. "I know about the affair. We need to talk," I stated firmly. "I don't think we should," he replied, clearly flustered. "Who is she? I assume you saw enough to know her name. When did it start?" "A year ago. Can we not do this right now? Why did you start seeing her? Please, let's not do this." "Don't call me babe. Tell me." "I don't know. I guess I just missed the thrill of someone new, someone who's on the same wavelength as me." "So, I'm not on the same wavelength as you?" "Well, I wouldn't say that exactly. It's just that you've become a bit dull." "Excuse me. I mean, you never want to go out. You're always tired, and our social life, even our life in the bedroom, has faded. Do you realize I'm always tired because handle all the chores and work full-time, yet you've never once offered to help? That's just your role as my wife," he snapped. "I told you to stay at home, but you refuse. Still, that doesn't excuse you from contributing around the house." This confrontation marked a turning point for me, revealing just how differently we viewed marriage and our responsibilities. His words shattered the foundation of trust and mutual respect I thought we had built. "I'm the head of the house," he declared. "I can do whatever I want. If that means having an affair for some fun, then so be it." Michael's assertion cut through the air, showcasing his distorted view of freedom within our marriage. I had hoped for a conversation that might help us mend our relationship, but it was clear he had no intention of engaging. "I don't think anything will change. You're just too dull. I'm happy to stay married, but I'll continue seeing Isabella. I need some space from you," he declared, his tone devoid of any remorse. As he retreated to another room, the weight of his words pressed down on me. He was unapologetic and dismissive, reducing me to a mere role within our home. Michael, who had once seemed progressive, had succumbed to outdated gender roles. Influenced by podcasts that preached that women were too outspoken and needed to be kept in line, it was devastating to see him transform into someone who not only embraced these ideas but also refused to acknowledge the harm they inflicted. Moments later, I heard the front door close behind him. He had left to meet Isabella. Overwhelmed by a sense of abandonment and betrayal, I broke down, unable to bear the solitude or the storm of emotions swirling inside me. I called my best friend, Judy, and she answered immediately. Sensing the distress in my voice, she rushed over with comforting hugs and tubs of ice cream. Judy didn't press for details. Instead, she simply held me as I cried. When I finally calmed down enough, I opened up about the painful truth. "Michael is cheating on me, Judy. It's true." "Are you sure?" she asked, a frown of concern etching her face. "Absolutely. His phone was unlocked, and I saw a message from a woman asking when he was leaving his pathetic wife to meet her." "What the hell? Did you confront him about it?" "Yes, but he barely wanted to talk," I replied, the weight of the situation crashing down around me. Judy stayed with me through the night, offering the silent, steadfast support I desperately needed to face the reality of my crumbling marriage. As we sat together, the enormity of my situation settled in, but even amidst the uncertainty, I knew I wasn't alone. I finally confronted him and uncovered the painful truth. He had been cheating on me for a year. He claimed I had become too boring, always too tired, and never up for anything fun. Despite managing nearly everything at home, he dismissed my efforts, insisting that it was simply my role as his wife. Well then, I remarked to Judy, still reeling from the shock, his role as a husband should have been more honorable. But here he is, cheating on his wife. Judy shook her head in disbelief. That's just a pathetic excuse. Did he even apologize? Not for a moment, I replied. He just blamed me and chose to spend the night with her. Honestly, Judy, if I had to face him now, I don't know what I'd do. So, what are you thinking about doing next? She asked. I'm not sure. Michael said he doesn't mind staying married, but I can't continue like this. Why don't you stay with me until you figure things out? I'll help you through everything, Judy offered. That would be amazing. Thank you so much, Judy. I really appreciate your support. We spent the rest of the evening trying to unwind by watching our favorite movies. It was a much-needed distraction, but the reality of my situation lingered in the back of my mind. The next morning, Judy helped me pack a few things to take to her place. Once I settled in at her home, my curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to look up Isabella. I still had access to Michael's social media on my phone, a privilege I had never abused before because I had trusted him completely. To my dismay, I discovered that he had muted notifications for messages from Isabella, which explained why the affair had remained hidden for so long. It turned out that Isabella was a coworker of his, someone who reported directly to him. She was 38 years younger than me and 11 years younger than Michael. The realization alone was enough to turn my stomach. This discovery only solidified my decision to move forward with my life. I knew I had to divorce Michael. I couldn't bear the betrayal, nor could I live with someone who viewed me as merely an obligation. With Judy's unwavering support, I began taking steps to reclaim my life and dignity. Before filing for divorce, I needed to sort a few things out. Judy and I spent time strategizing not only the logistics of the separation but also how to ensure that Michael wouldn't get off too lightly for his betrayal. My first step was to safeguard my finances by transferring all the money I had contributed to our joint account into my personal account, one to which Michael had no access. In the days that followed, as I set the wheels in motion to file for divorce, I heard nothing from Michael. I was stunned to realize he hadn't even bothered to check in on me. His indifference underscored how little he valued our relationship. When I eventually returned home to collect more of my belongings, I found Michael lounging on the couch. His predictable yet irritating reaction greeted me. "Where have you been? Why haven't you told me where you were?" he demanded, his voice laced with a feigned concern that failed to mask his true detachment. "Why do I need to explain myself to you? You hadn't called once. Don't pretend to care now," I retorted, my patience wearing thin. "I'm sorry, but finding out about your infidelity because you think I'm too boring doesn't exactly inspire politeness," I added sarcastically. Michael seemed taken aback but quickly shifted the conversation to finances. "I noticed you withdrew a large sum from our joint account," he said, attempting to sound casual but clearly concerned. "Yes, I took back my money. Why should I let you squander what I've worked hard to earn?" Challenged him. "What do you think you're doing? You need to put that money back," he demanded, his tone shifting to a threatening edge. "Or what, Michael? You'll kick me out? Move in with Isabella and have your sister move in here." I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity. "Put the money back in 3 hours or I'll make sure everything changes by tomorrow," he threatened. I responded with silence, walking past him to our room. I quickly packed the rest of my clothes and essentials, leaving Michael to stew in his frustration. Once back at Judy's place, I recounted the entire encounter. Furious on my behalf, Judy insisted we consult a lawyer immediately. Fortunately, she knew someone who could help. We met with her lawyer friend, who began by asking about the house. I explained that both the mortgage and the title were solely in my name, a result of my well-paying job in a specialized field. This detail was crucial. It meant I had significant leverage in the upcoming legal proceedings. With Judy's support and the lawyer's guidance, I felt better equipped to face the challenges ahead. Earning significantly more than Michael, it made sense for me to handle the mortgage and purchase our home, establishing it entirely in my name. This financial arrangement was straightforward and practical, considering our respective incomes. Everything the house needed was purchased by me. When I consulted with my lawyer about the impending divorce, he reassured me that the house would legally remain mine, lifting a weight off my shoulders. He also explained that if Michael's sister, Karen, moved in without my consent, I could easily issue an eviction notice. The next morning, despite the tension, Michael informed me that Karen had moved in because I hadn't reversed the money transfer. I kept the conversation brief, which only fueled his anger, and he ended the call abruptly. Following my lawyer's advice, I started recording all conversations with Michael to maintain a reliable record for potential court use. My strategy moving forward was clear, with two possible outcomes. I would serve Karen the eviction notice. If she complied, that would be the end of it. If not, I was prepared to take legal action, given our strained history. I had a feeling this wouldn't be straightforward. Karen had always harbored a peculiar animosity toward me, frequently trying to undermine or outshine me in petty ways. She even attempted to disrupt our wedding and consistently competed with me over trivial matters. Over the years, our relationship had deteriorated to the point where I had to limit contact with her. Michael, overly protective and indulgent toward his sister, often put me in uncomfortable situations. Karen's resentment only grew when she realized she couldn't surpass me in certain aspects of life, leading her to engage in petty theft whenever she visited our home. I frequently noticed missing items, designer clothes, shoes, and skincare products. Michael urged me to overlook these incidents, rationalizing that Karen's frugal lifestyle justified her taking some of our luxuries. I strongly disagreed and eventually banned her from visiting altogether. This decision didn't sit well with either Michael or Karen, but he was powerless to challenge it, given my legal rights over the property. The situation was complicated, but I was determined to stand my ground and take the necessary actions to protect my interests and ensure a fair resolution to our marital breakdown. Having had enough of Karen's antics and the significant thefts she had committed, I explained the extent of her actions to Michael. He understood that the damage went far beyond what could be easily rectified. However, that didn't stop Karen from trying to provoke me further. One day, she called to flaunt her temporary triumph. "Hello, Donna. Guess where I am right now?" she taunted. "Michael told me you've moved in," I replied, keeping my tone even. "That's right. I have this huge, glorious house all to myself, something you don't," she gloated. "I still own the house. I've already sent you an eviction notice and you have 4 days to move out," I informed her calmly. "An eviction notice from you? Like, I'll take that seriously. This is my brother's house and he told me I could stay here, so I will," she retorted defiantly. "It's not his house, Karen. Regardless of what Michael told you, the legal documents clearly show that the property is mine." Yeah, marital property or whatever. But he has all the power here. He decided this was the best thing to do, she insisted, misunderstanding the situation entirely. "You really can't stop talking, can you? I see why my brother chose another woman," Karen snapped, hoping to hurt me further. "Well, I have nothing more to say. Goodbye," I said, ending the call just as I heard her spiteful laughter. If she didn't vacate within the 4 days, she would soon find out just how serious I was. I was fully prepared to take Karen to court. I had all the legal backing I needed. Unsurprisingly, she informed Michael about our conversation, and within an hour, he called, furious, questioning my aita to send her an eviction notice. As before, I chose not to engage with his anger. In the next 4 days, 2 significant events unfolded. I had the divorce papers delivered to Michael, who shockingly decided to contest them, and Karen still had not moved out. Following through on my threat, I had a court summons sent to her. Legally, she was considered a squatter. When Karen received the summons, she was visibly shocked to learn that the house was in my name, not her precious brother's. She confronted me, accusing me of trickery. "You set me up," she cried. "I did no such thing," I replied firmly. "I gave you ample warning and time to leave. I even told you to move out." The reality of her situation was finally starting to dawn on her, and I was ready to uphold my rights no matter what. Since Karen refused to heed my warnings, she had to face the consequences in court. My lawyer presented a solid case, including the eviction notice and recordings of phone calls where I repeatedly asked Karen to vacate the premises, all of which she blatantly refused. In my state, Squatting is considered a serious offense, resulting in Karen being charged with a class A misdemeanor. The look of utter defeat and humiliation on her face was deeply satisfying after enduring years of her antagonism. After the court proceedings, Michael and Karen, still unable to accept their defeat, confronted me at Judy's place, where I had been staying. "How could you do that to my little sister?" Michael demanded. "Your little sister has made my life miserable for years, and I finally put a stop to it in the only way I knew how. You initially agreed with my decision, yet the moment I stood up for myself, you sided with her," I responded, my frustration evident. "I only did that because she had nowhere else to go after the eviction. I was doing her a favor," Michael argued. "So, the house suddenly became an option because we're separating. If we weren't, would you have snuck her in?" I countered. Michael stumbled over his words, but I cut him off. "Save it, Michael. I don't want to hear anymore. I'll just see you in court." "How is the house even in your name? Your brother's name isn't on any of the documents," he exclaimed. "I've been the one paying off the mortgage and making all the repairs meticulously for the past 4 years. No matter how much your brother contests it in court, he won't get any ownership of the house. All he'll get is a much lighter wallet," I retorted. Karen interjected, clearly not grasping the legal reality. "You think I set him up?" "I did nothing of the sort. Your brother believes in being the man of the house, yet he avoids any real responsibilities, preferring that I do all the hard work while he reaps the benefits. Thank God that won't be my problem anymore," I shot back, my patience exhausted. With that, I slammed the door in their faces, ending the conversation. In the weeks that followed, Michael, realizing he wouldn't win the house, decided to contest every single possession we shared, down to the most trivial items like our dessert spoons. The battle was petty and exhausting, but I was prepared to fight for my peace and freedom, no matter how long it took. I was completely unfazed by Michael's attempts to claim our shared possessions. For every piece of furniture and item he claimed as his, I had the receipts clearly showing who had paid for them. In truth, he hadn't contributed much, so he was only going to get a minimal share. While Michael was preoccupied with this petty squabble, I took action on another front. I sent screenshots of his inappropriate communications with Judy to his company's HR department. Within 2 weeks, Michael was terminated from his job. Surprisingly, Isabella was not. I learned from some of Michael's colleagues, with whom I had remained friendly, that she had argued Michael coerced her into the relationship by threatening her professional standing. Understandably, their relationship did not survive this revelation. It took some time, but eventually the divorce was finalized, and I was officially free to celebrate my newfound independence and the successful resolution of a complex situation. Judy and I enjoyed a long celebration. It felt like a double victory. The last update I received on Michael and Karen was less than glamorous. They ended up living together in a modest apartment, both struggling to find jobs. Their parents were supporting them with a modest allowance, but they were far from pleased with their children's actions. My former in-laws even reached out to apologize for their behavior, a gesture that helped bring closure to the entire ordeal. Now free, I looked forward to what life had to offer next. This entire experience reinforced a valuable lesson: never forget my worth. It also showed me that I could handle myself in tough situations. I was a force to be reckoned with. Here's to moving forward, stronger and wiser. Cheers. Hello, I'm Donna, a 38-year-old woman who has recently freed herself from a stifling marriage. The decision to part ways with my husband felt like reclaiming my true freedom. Allow me to share the story of my ex-husband, Michael. Michael and I first met through a blind date set up by a mutual friend. From the beginning, he was undeniably handsome and possessed an irresistible charm. He seemed to be everything I had ever wanted in a partner. We shared numerous interests and our conversations flowed effortlessly. For the first 7 months, we enjoyed a casual dating phase, taking turns planning exciting and enjoyable activities. Once we officially became a couple, our dynamic outings continued, and a year later, we moved in together. It was during this time that I became aware of Michael's unstable financial situation. Despite offering advice to help him advance professionally, he rarely took it seriously. Nevertheless, he earned enough to meet his needs, and I was prepared to support us both financially. 3 years into our relationship, we married, and a year later, decided to buy a house. I secured the mortgage in my name on loan due to my superior credit score, a decision that now seems fortuitous. However, 4 years into our marriage, I noticed a troubling shift in Michael's behavior. He became increasingly demanding and stopped contributing to household chores, claiming to be too busy with work. Despite my understanding and efforts to manage everything on my own, the burden became overwhelming. I addressed the issue with Michael, who would briefly promise to improve, but we soon fell back into old patterns. I tolerated this out of love and a desire to support him fully, but it took a toll on our relationship, especially in terms of leisure and enjoyment. It was under these strange circumstances that I discovered Michael's infidelity. I stumbled upon his affair quite unexpectedly. He had left his phone unlocked while taking a shower. I had no intention of snooping. I just wanted to charge his phone when a notification caught my eye. It was a message from a woman named Isabella, asking Michael how long it would be until he left his pathetic wife to meet her at a nearby motel. The shock and heartbreak were immediate. I couldn't believe Michael was capable of such betrayal. Our marriage had seemed solid, with Michael always greeting me warmly and us rarely arguing. The pain was overwhelming, a mix of tears and nausea as my world seemed to crumble. In that moment, I knew I had to confront the situation head-on. I left Michael's phone exactly as I found it, with the message still open, ensuring he would know I had seen it. When Michael emerged from the shower and saw his phone, he instantly realized I was aware of the affair. He tried to evade the conversation, but I was determined to address it. "I know about the affair," I said. "Let's talk about it." "I don't think we should," he replied. "Who is she? I'm sure you saw enough to know her name." "When did it start?" "A year ago," he said, avoiding eye contact. "Can we not do this right now?" "Why did you start seeing her?" I pressed. "Please, let's not do this," he pleaded. "Don't call me babe. Tell me," I insisted. "I don't know," he said. "I guess I just missed the thrill of someone new, someone on the same wavelength as me." "So not on the same wavelength as you?" I asked. "Well, I wouldn't say that exactly," he said. "It's just that you've become a bit dull. You never want to go out, you're always tired, and our social life, and even our life in the bedroom, has faded." "You realize I'm always tired because I handle all the chores and work full-time," I retorted. "You've never once offered to help." "That's just your role as my wife," he said. "I told you to stay at home, but you refused." "That still doesn't excuse you from contributing to the house," I said. This confrontation marked a turning point, making it clear that our views on marriage and responsibilities were vastly different. His words and actions shattered the trust and respect I thought we had. "I can do whatever I want," Michael declared, his words slicing through the tension in the room. "If that means having an affair for some fun, then so be it." His distorted view of freedom within our marriage was startling and painful. I had hoped we could discuss this and possibly repair our relationship, but his stance made it clear that was no longer an option. "I don't think anything will change," he continued dismissively. "You're just too dull. I'm happy to stay married, but I'll keep seeing Isabella. I need some space from you." His tone was cold and unapologetic as he retreated to another room, leaving me to grapple with the weight of his words. Michael's disregard and detachment were devastating. He had reduced me to a mere role within our home, despite never having previously held such outdated views on gender roles. It was apparent that he had been influenced by podcasts promoting the idea that women were too outspoken and needed to be controlled. Witnessing his transformation into someone who not only embraced these harmful ideas but also failed to acknowledge their damage was heart-wrenching. Soon after, I heard the front door slam. Michael had left to meet Isabella. Overcome by a profound sense of abandonment and betrayal, I could no longer bear the solitude or the storm of emotions crashing over me. In my distress, I called my best friend Judy. She answered right away, sensing the urgency in my voice. Within moments, she was at my door with comforting hugs and tubs of ice cream. She didn't press for details. Instead, she held me as I cried. When I finally composed myself enough to speak, I shared the painful revelation with her. "Michael is cheating on me, Judy. It's true." "Are you sure?" she asked, concern etched on her face. "Absolutely," I replied. His phone was unlocked, and I saw a message from a woman asking when he was leaving his pathetic wife to meet her. "What did you do?" Judy inquired. "I confronted him," I said, tears welling up again. He barely wanted to talk about it. Judy stayed with me through the night, offering silent, steadfast support as I faced the harsh reality of my crumbling marriage. As we sat together, the gravity of my situation began to sink in, and though the future remained uncertain, I was grateful for her unwavering presence. I knew I wasn't alone anymore. I finally confronted Michael and uncovered the painful truth. He had been cheating on me for a year. His excuse was that I had become too boring, always too tired and never up for anything fun. Despite managing almost everything at home, he dismissed my efforts, insisting it was simply my role as his wife. Well, if that's the role of a wife, then his role as a husband should have been more honorable, I told Judy, still reeling from the shock. Instead, here he is, cheating on me. Judy shook her head in disbelief. That's just a pathetic excuse. Did he even apologize? Not for a second, I replied. He just blamed me and chose to spend the night with her. Honestly, Judy, if I had to face him now, I don't know what I'd do. So, what are you thinking of doing next? Judy asked. I'm not sure. Michael mentioned he's fine staying married, but there's no way I can continue like this. Listen, Judy said, why don't you stay with me until you figure things out? I'll help you through everything. That would be amazing. Thank you so much, Judy. I really appreciate your support. We spent the rest of the evening trying to unwind, watching our favorite movies. It was a welcome distraction, but the reality of my situation lingered in the back of my mind. The next morning, Judy helped me pack some things to bring to her place. Once settled in at her home, curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to look up Isabella. I still had access to Michael's social media on my phone, a privilege I had never abused before because I trusted him completely. I discovered that Michael had muted notifications for messages from Isabella, which explained why the affair had remained hidden until now. It turned out that Isabella was a coworker of his, actually someone who reported directly to him. She was 38 years younger than me and 11 years younger than Michael. Just that revelation alone was enough to make my stomach churn. This discovery solidified my decision. I needed to divorce Michael. I couldn't endure the betrayal, nor could I live with someone who saw me as merely an obligation. With Judy's unwavering support, I began taking steps to reclaim my life and dignity. Before filing for divorce, I needed to sort out a few things. Judy and I spent time strategizing not only about the logistics of the separation, but also about ensuring that Michael would face appropriate consequences for his betrayal. My first priority was to protect my finances. I transferred all the money I had contributed to our joint account into a personal account, ensuring that Michael had no access. In the days that followed, as I prepared to file for divorce, I heard nothing from Michael. It was a painful reminder of how little he valued our relationship. When I eventually returned home to collect more of my belongings, I found Michael lounging on the couch. His reaction to seeing me was as predictable as it was irritating. "Where have you been? Why haven't you told me where you were?" he demanded, his voice tinged with a faint concern that barely masked his real detachment. "Why should I explain myself to you? You haven't called once. Don't pretend to care now," I snapped, my patience wearing thin. "I'm sorry, but discovering your infidelity because you found me too boring doesn't exactly inspire politeness," I added with a touch of sarcasm. Michael seemed taken aback, but he quickly redirected the conversation to finances. "I noticed you withdrew a large sum from our joint account," he said, trying to sound casual but clearly concerned. "Yes, I took back my money," I replied. "Why should I let you squander what I've worked hard to earn?" He frowned and said, "What do you think you're doing? You need to put that money back." "Or what?" I challenged. "Are you going to kick me out, move in with Isabella, and have your sister take my place here?" I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of his threats. "Put the money back in 3 hours, or I'll make sure everything changes by tomorrow," he said, his tone growing menacing. I responded with silence, walking past him to our room. I quickly packed up the rest of my clothes and essentials, leaving him to stew in his frustration. Back at Judy's place, I recounted the entire encounter. Judy was furious on my behalf and insisted we consult a lawyer immediately. Fortunately, she knew someone who could help. We met with her lawyer friend, who first asked about the house. I explained that both the mortgage and the house title were in my name alone, a result of my well-paying job in a niche field. This detail was crucial as it meant I had significant leverage in the upcoming legal proceedings. With Judy's support and the lawyer's guidance, I felt better prepared to face the challenges ahead. Since I earned significantly more than Michael, it made sense for me to handle the mortgage and purchase the house, establishing it entirely in my name. This financial arrangement was straightforward and practical given our respective incomes. I had also taken care of everything the house needed. When I consulted with my lawyer about the impending divorce, he reassured me that the house would legally remain in my name, which lifted a weight off my shoulders. He also explained that if Michael's sister, Karen, moved in without my consent. Despite the tension, Michael informed me the next morning that Karen had moved in, citing my failure to reverse the money transfer. I kept the conversation brief, which only fueled his anger. He ended the call abruptly. Following my lawyer's advice, I began recording all conversations with Michael to maintain a reliable record for potential court use. My strategy moving forward was straightforward. I would issue Karen an eviction notice. If she complied, that would end the matter. If not, I was prepared to pursue legal action. Given our strained history, I anticipated it wouldn't be simple. Karen had always shown a peculiar hostility towards me, frequently trying to overshadow me in petty ways. She even attempted to disrupt our wedding and competed with me over trivial matters. Our relationship had deteriorated to the point where I had to limit contact with her. Michael, overly protective and indulgent toward his sister, often placed me in uncomfortable positions. Karen's resentment grew when she realized she couldn't outshine me, leading her to steal from our home during her visits. I would notice missing items, designer clothes, shoes, and skincare products. Michael urged me to overlook these incidents, rationalizing that Karen's frugal lifestyle justified her taking some luxuries. I strongly disagreed and eventually banned her from visiting our home altogether. Although neither Michael nor Karen was pleased with this decision, Michael was powerless to challenge it due to the legal standings and my control over the property. Determined to protect my interests and ensure a fair resolution to our marital breakdown, I was ready to stand my ground. Having had enough of Karen's antics and theft, I explained the extent of her actions to Michael. He understood that the damage was significant, but Karen continued to provoke me. One day, she called to gloat, "Hello, Donna. Guess where I am right now?" I remained calm. "Michael told me you've moved in." "That's right," she boasted. "I have this huge, glorious house all to myself, something you don't." "I still do have the house," I replied. "I've already sent an eviction notice your way, and you have 4 days to move out." She laughed derisively. "An eviction notice from you? Like I'm going to follow through with that. This is my brother's house, and he told me I can stay here, so I will." "It's not his house, Karen," I said firmly. "Regardless of what Michael told you, the legal documents show that the property is mine." Yeah, marital property or whatever, but he has all the power here," she insisted, misunderstanding the situation. "He decided this was the best thing to do." "You really can't stop talking, can you?" she snapped, trying to hurt me further. "I see why my brother chose someone else." "Fine," I said. "I have nothing more to say. Goodbye." I ended the call, but not before hearing Karen's spiteful laughter. If she didn't vacate within the 4-day deadline, I was fully prepared to take her to court. I had all the legal backing I needed. Unsurprisingly, Karen informed Michael of our conversation, and within an hour, he called me enraged. He questioned my audacity to issue an eviction notice. I chose not to respond to his anger. In the next 4 days, 2 significant events unfolded. First, I had the divorce papers served to Michael, and he shockingly decided to contest them. Second, Karen had still not moved out. True to my word, I had a court summons delivered to her. Legally, she was now considered a squatter. When Karen received the summons, she was visibly shocked to learn that the house was in my name, not her precious brother's. She confronted me, accusing me of trickery. I responded firmly, "I gave you ample warning and time to leave. I even sent you a formal eviction notice." The reality of her situation was finally dawning on her. I was ready to uphold my rights, no matter what. Karen's refusal to heed my warnings led her to face the consequences in court. My lawyer presented a solid case, including the eviction notice and recordings of phone calls where I repeatedly asked Karen to vacate the premises, which she blatantly refused. In my state, squatting was a serious offense, resulting in Karen being charged with a Class A misdemeanor. The look of utter defeat and humiliation on her face was deeply satisfying after enduring years of her antagonism. After the court proceedings, Michael and Karen, still unable to accept the defeat, confronted me at Judy's place, where I had been staying. "How could you do that to my little sister?" Michael demanded. "Your little sister has made my life miserable for years, and I finally put a stop to it in the only way I knew how," I replied, my frustration evident. a decision you initially agreed with. Yet the moment I stood up for myself, you sided with her. Michael argued, so the house suddenly became an option because we're separating. If we weren't, would you have snuck her in? I cut him off. Save it, Michael. I don't want to hear any more. I'll see you in court. How is the house even in your name? My brother's name isn't on any of the documents. I've been paying off the mortgage and handling repairs for the past 4 years, I explained. No matter how much your brother contests it, he won't gain any ownership of the house. All he'll get is a much lighter wallet. Karen interjected, clearly not understanding the legal situation. You think I set him up? I did nothing of the sort. Your brother believed in being the man of the house but avoided real responsibilities, preferring that I handle everything while he enjoyed the benefits. Thank God that won't be my problem anymore, I retorted, my patience wearing thin. I slammed the door in their faces, ending the conversation. In the weeks that followed, Michael, realizing he couldn't win the house, decided to contest every single possession we shared, down to the most trivial items like our dessert spoons. The battle was petty and exhausting, but I was determined to fight for my peace and freedom. For every item Michael claimed as his, I had the receipts clearly showing who had paid for them. In truth, he hadn't contributed much, so his share was minimal. While Michael was preoccupied with this petty squabble, I took action on another front. I sent screenshots of his inappropriate communications with Judy to his company's HR department. Within 2 weeks, Michael was terminated from his job. Surprisingly, Isabella was not. I learned from some of Michael's colleagues, with whom I had remained friendly, that she had argued Michael coerced her into the relationship by threatening her professional standing. Understandably, their relationship did not survive this revelation. It took some time, but eventually, the divorce was finalized, and I was officially free to celebrate my newfound freedom and the successful resolution of a complex situation. Judy and I enjoyed a long celebration. It felt like a double victory. The last update I received on Michael and Karen was less than glamorous. They ended up living together in a modest apartment, both struggling to find jobs. Their parents were supporting them with a modest allowance, but they were far from pleased with their actions. My former in-laws even reached out to apologize for their children's behavior, a gesture that helped bring some closure to the entire ordeal. Now free, I looked forward to what life had to offer next. The entire experience reinforced a valuable lesson: never forget my worth. It also showed me that I could handle myself in tough situations. A force to be reckoned with. Here's to moving forward stronger and wiser. Cheers.
I initiated the divorce proceedings, deeming a financially struggling spouse to be of little value. My world was shaken when, during a business trip, my husband abruptly declared not only his intent to divorce, but also his simultaneous marriage to his lover. To add insult to injury, he accused me of marrying him solely for his wealth and demanded I forfeit any claims to our property. Confronting my indifferent husband, who had always treated me with disdain since our marriage, led to his unraveling and a downward spiral to rock bottom. I am Karen, 35 years old, raised by a single mother since my father's passing in kindergarten. Despite the financial challenges, we found happiness as a family of 3. Even as an adult with a decent salary, my frugal habits persisted from childhood. I married John, a wealthy man I met through an acquaintance, drawn to his kindness and the new world he presented. Our differing views on money and gender roles emerged after marriage. While John envisioned a traditional household, I was dedicated to my career and financial independence. Before marriage, John suggested I become a homemaker, assuming I would embrace traditional domestic roles. However, I expressed my desire to continue working until we had children, emphasizing the financial benefits. Although I managed to convince him, the reality of balancing work and household chores proved challenging. Despite being a full-time employee, my days were consumed with domestic responsibilities, leaving little time for us as a couple. In contrast, John, adopting a traditional husband role, contributed nothing to household tasks. While he witnessed my busy schedule, he simply indulged in dinner and relaxation upon returning home. Balancing work and domestic responsibilities took a toll on our relationship, prompting me to question if this was the essence of a marriage. Despite my efforts, I hesitated to voice my dissatisfaction. Fearing he might insist I quit my job despite his lack of contribution at home. I had hoped that the arrival of children would bring about a positive change in our relationship. Unfortunately, our connection had grown distant, casting doubt on the possibility of expanding our family. Feeling the urgency to discuss this matter, I approached John. "Hey, we should start considering having kids, right?" "Huh. Kids? You're quite energetic, considering you're tired from work and chores." "It's not about that. I want to have children. We haven't been married that long, but I'm already over 30. Women have a limited time to have children, and it's getting harder for me to conceive as I get older. It's almost too late. But we don't need kids. If we have one, you'll expect me to help, right? You know I'm busy with work, and I won't help with child rearing." Declaring you won't help with child rearing even before they're born is strange, isn't it? I plan to raise them alone, but shouldn't you at least have the intention to help? It's your child too. Child rearing is your job. I'm working to support the family, so I definitely won't help with the kids. You'll just complain that I don't help, making me the bad guy. You must have been indoctrinated with poverty and lots of kids since birth. We're not poor. We don't need kids. End of discussion. John abruptly ended the conversation, retreating to his room. Alone in the living room, tears overwhelmed me. My desire for children was not only rejected, but my upbringing was also mocked. Following this incident, our relationship deteriorated rapidly. Communication became scarce, and the possibility of having children seemed more distant. As I continued to juggle work and home responsibilities, taking on significant projects at work, I found myself increasingly distant from John. One day, when informing him about an upcoming business trip, his unexpected kindness surprised me. He wished me well and hinted at a big surprise upon my return. Despite having given up on him, his smile shook my resolve. However, my faint hope was shattered upon returning home. The front door wouldn't open, and John revealed the first surprise. He had changed the locks. The second surprise was the announcement of our divorce. He claimed to have forged my signature and submitted the papers with a friend as a witness. Inside, he presented a document for me to sign, waiving my rights to property division. Protesting the false accusations, I insisted on a mutual renunciation of property rights, intending to make it a public document. John, stubbornly retorting, redid the document on his computer, initiating a tense exchange. As I left the house, he continued to scorn me for being poor, even contemplating discarding my belongings. A few days later, John, in a state of panic, called me, wondering what I had done. "What do you mean I haven't done anything? Why are you panicking?" "I have a lot of questions. First, I was told to leave the apartment." "Oh, you were still living there. That's not allowed. It's a new month. You're trespassing." "Trespassing? But it's my house. Are you okay? Did you forget that it was a company apartment I rented? I was the leaseholder, so naturally, you can't live there anymore." "That's ridiculous. How could you do this? I can't believe you didn't know. I'm not the one who should be accused of doing things on my own. Didn't I tell you that you can't just change the locks of a rental apartment? It's my house. I can change the locks if I want. Didn't you listen? It was my leased apartment. Even if you were the leaseholder, the owner is the apartment manager. You can't change the locks without informing them." "Is that so? Also, I terminated the lease while you changed the locks. I was allowed to live there until this month. I was planning to return, but now you've unlawfully altered someone else's property, which could be criminal damage. Wait, why did you terminate it so early? Criminal damage? Is that why the police are at the front door now? I'm too scared to open it." But I calmly replied, "So the police did come. Don't worry, it's probably not for trespassing or criminal damage. It's better to talk to them." "Why do I know about the police?" "Because I reported you for filing the divorce papers yourself. It seems like you've committed crimes like forgery and fraudulent use of a private document. Divorce papers can be filed by one person, but only with mutual agreement and personal signatures. Since John forged my signature and the witness, it's obvious that it's a crime. But he seemed unaware of his guilt. I continued pressing further. So the divorce papers you submitted are invalid, and your marriage with Susan can't happen either. How do you know about Susan? Did you think I knew nothing? I had a private detective agency thoroughly investigate your affair with Susan. It was a busy time at work, and coordinating with the agency was tough. Plus, you even held a grand wedding ceremony while I was supposedly on a business trip. Are you okay? Your business trip was a lie. Yes, I took leave from work despite being busy to do some research and prepare documents. I knew about you bringing Susan home. It would have been impossible to gather this evidence while working. After I revealed everything, John was speechless and seemed quite downcast even over the phone. Then he pleaded with me, "Please don't tell Susan I'm divorced." Why would I? There's no such fact to tell. Really? Thank you. Are you misunderstanding something? When did you become divorced? That fake divorce paper is invalid, remember? So legally, you're still my husband, not divorced. What? So since you committed adultery, well, legally, my husband, Susan needs to pay compensation. I sent the demand for reparation to her house yesterday by express delivery. She didn't know you were married, right? Then I can't withdraw the claim at this point. I already knew Susan believed John was single, but I deliberately sent the reparation demand. Susan hasn't contacted me yet, so maybe she hasn't received the letter. It should arrive soon. Should you be on the phone with me when you also have to deal with the police? You're busy? I'll ignore the police. I won't be arrested. I'm going to Susan's house now to get the letter back before she or her family can accept it. He then hung up. He probably went straight to Susan's house to wait for the postman at the front door. I knew it would be futile because the letter was sent as registered mail to Susan only. Even if he waited for the postman, he couldn't receive it. A few hours later, a dispirited John called me. According to him, there was an incident when the postman arrived. Finally, I'll take that envelope. Who are you? You don't live here, right? I'm practically a resident here since I'm married. I have the right to receive the mail. I see, but I can't give you this envelope. It's registered mail for Susan only. What? Give it to me. Absolutely not. If you're so eager, ask Susan for permission. What's going on here? Oh, John, what's all this noise? What's happening? Ah, Susan, this is registered mail for you. This man insisted on taking it. Sorry for the disturbance. Now I'll be on my way. What's this? A demand for reparation. John, you are married. What's going on here? Sorry, it's just, she's an ex-wife from a long time ago. I was embarrassed to say I'm divorced. I'm sorry for keeping it secret. But it's strange, isn't it? We haven't been dating long, and a demand for reparation? If you were divorced before we started dating, there shouldn't be any problem, right? Well, my ex-wife is crazy. Maybe she's demanding reparation out of spite because I got married. That was the excuse he gave, but such a lie was quickly exposed. The envelope included a letter I wrote along with my contact information, so Susan called me directly. In that call, I told her about the affair, the invalid divorce, and that they had a wedding ceremony while he was still married to me. Although they had a wedding ceremony, they hadn't submitted the marriage registration yet. John wanted to submit it on April Fool's Day, so it was still pending. He probably delayed submitting the marriage registration due to uncertainty about whether the divorce was finalized. After being exposed, John fled from Susan's house and shamelessly contacted me again. I still had something to tell him, so we agreed to meet at a nearby cafe. As soon as I arrived, John said, "Karen, please withdraw the reparation claim. Let's pretend we've been separated for a long time and officially divorced now. I can apologize to Susan for being secretly divorced and maybe cover it up. You think I'm desperate to stay married to you. I was going to file for divorce anyway, but since you cheated, you'll pay reparation. Just trying to extort money from me, huh? Typical of the poor. You have such a poor heart. you're talking nonsense. Depending on my answer, everything can change. There's still an option where we don't divorce. If I say no, you can't reject it, meaning you can't marry Susan, and your marital status will be exposed. Fine, I'll pay the reparation. Just divorce me now. Sign here. Then, about property division. Property division? How much more do you want to take from me? Reparation should be enough. Remember, we agreed to waive property division, right? So let's make it official. All right. You're not as bad as I thought. Thank you. We then went to a public notary, made a public document for reparation and property division, and then to the city hall to submit the divorce papers, finalizing our divorce. Relieved, I exchanged final words with John. Glad we don't have to divide property. What are you saying? I'm the one who benefits from that. By the way, do you even have assets after paying me reparation? Susan will also claim damages. She mentioned charging you for the wedding expenses. That's impossible. I'm marrying Susan. She can't claim that. We're divorced now, so there should be no problem. Still living in a fantasy. You committed marriage fraud. You had a wedding while still married. You think Susan still believes you. Marriage fraud? That's ridiculous. Susan will believe me. Believe that if you want. I heard from Susan directly. Also, weren't the guests at your wedding paid actors? You still owe them. You knew about that. I haven't paid them yet. What does it matter to you? You could have just taken property division and been better off. That's what I wanted to tell you. Even if we had divided property, you would have benefited more. What are you talking about, poor woman? Your family is poor, and you only make $15,000 a year, right? Even if you got a raise, it would be barely $20,000. You don't have any property. You keep calling me poor, so I thought you might be mistaken. Yes, my salary is indeed $15,000. But you know I work for a foreign company, right? It seems you have no interest in me. But I became a director of the American branch. It's not $115,000 per year, but per month. $155,000 per month. So that's an annual income of $1.8 million. You're still bad with numbers. How do you manage to keep a job? It's $180,000 a year. $180,000? That can't be true. Of course, I haven't had the chance to spend such an amount, so I've been saving it for the future. The savings from before our marriage aren't part of the property division, but there's still a considerable amount since our marriage. So I could have received half of that in the property division. You are my destiny after all. I'll get the divorce papers corrected. Are you okay? After all the contempt, you think I'd gladly undo the divorce if you have that much money. You don't need to claim reparation, right? It's just a small amount for you. He who laughs at 1 cent will weep for 1 cent. This reparation is for the mental anguish you caused me. I'd like to claim more honestly. And since we've made it official, make sure to pay it even in installments. I'll be penniless. Also, don't go back to that apartment. Your belongings should have been moved to your parents' house by now. You thought I had few belongings, but that was because I had already moved. Most of them were. Were you that indifferent to me? I can't have so little, so I have to go back to my parents' house. They don't know anything yet, do they? Let me explain. Don't say anything. I've already told them everything. It's only right to explain why we're divorcing. Oh, and your father said, don't ever step over our threshold again, so I have nowhere to go. He collapsed, and I left the cafe. Later, I heard he caused trouble at the police station. Despite my advice, he went back to the apartment. He sat there aimlessly in the empty apartment until the manager called the police, and he was taken away. I'm not sure if it was for obstructing public duties, trespassing, or for the falsified divorce papers. Eventually, his parents took responsibility for him. After talking with me and learning about Susan, they decided that apologizing and paying damages to Susan's family came first. They went to Susan's house to apologize, kneeling in front of her family. They settled everything without pressing charges for marriage fraud, even paying for the wedding expenses. I had expected them to sue, so it was disappointing they didn't. So, I decided to pursue legal action against him for forging the divorce papers. John offered a settlement, but I didn't withdraw the lawsuit. I didn't want him to think everything could be solved with money. I wanted him to be convicted and understand the gravity of his actions, even if it cost time and money. I left everything to my lawyer, so it wasn't too burdensome for me. Even though it took time, John, exposed for his actions and the marriage fraud at his company, couldn't stay there anymore. After being detained by the police and subsequently absent without leave, he was eventually fired. He ended up living at his parents' home, working all day at a relative's construction company. His father took all his earnings, leaving him with no income. I thought his parents wouldn't abandon him, but they were stricter than I expected. They paid my reparation and Susan's compensation, planning to make him work like a horse until he repaid everything. He lived in a shed-like place with no electricity, receiving only $5 per day for food, deducted from his salary. They plan to disown and kick him out once he's repaid everything. A harsh fate after years of hard work. I was offered a position at the head office abroad, so I moved overseas after the divorce was finalized. I worried John might come to me for help or harbor resentment, but moving abroad alleviated those concerns. I thought work would be my partner for a while, but soon I found a new relationship. I'm now dating a foreign executive at our head office, and I'm pregnant with plans to marry soon. I told him everything about my past and my ex-husband, and he's understanding. I'll take maternity leave and plan to return to work later, supported by him. He's enthusiastic about taking paternity leave and co-parenting, showing a different cultural perspective. After being tormented by my ex-husband, I finally feel I'm grasping true happiness and confidence in building the happy family I've always dreamed of. Many suffer due to selfish spouses, and while divorce isn't always the right choice, enduring silence isn't a virtue. It's important to know that honest discussions can lead to resolutions, and sometimes divorce is a necessary option.
My dinner still isn't ready. If you're not going to take care of the housework, we're getting a divorce. I wonder who he thinks makes it possible for him to have meals. Fine, if that's how you feel, maybe we should get a divorce. What? I've had enough of this marriage and want to leave this house. Can you help me? Why should I? We're no longer connected, right? I'm Karen, a 34-year-old office worker. It's been a year since I married Shane. While many enjoy the bliss of newlywed life, my experience has been far from that. Honestly, our relationship has been strained. The root of the issue lies in his behavior. I overlooked it before marriage, but now I see that he's a classic domineering husband, overly controlling. Hey, where's the food? When will it be ready? I just got home. If you came home earlier, you could have made something yourself. What are you talking about? Don't you see I've been working hard and just got home? I was at work too. Your job can't be that important. I probably make more than you do. Bragging about your earnings. You're really narrow-minded. I hold a significant position at my company. I'll be earning more than you soon enough. Well, I hope that's true. Are you doubting me? How dare you question me like that? My husband reacts defensively to every word I say, trying to exert control. I'm going to set a curfew for you. A curfew? I was taken aback by his sudden declaration. We're not children. I'm serious. Be home by 7:00 p.m. Don't say such ridiculous things. I might be working late because of overtime. No matter how much I protested, my husband remained unyielding. Be quiet. I'm serious. You need to follow this rule. A promise should be made with mutual agreement. What my husband was imposing was nothing but coercion, a blatant threat. A few days later, after coming home past 8:00 p.m. due to work, I was met with an unbelievable situation. What? What do you mean? As I tried to unlock the front door, I realized the chain was on. Panicking, I pressed the intercom. Yes? I heard my husband's voice through the intercom. What's going on here? What do you mean? We agreed on a curfew of 7 p.m., didn't we? Huh? You were serious about that? Of course I was serious. I told him that while he speaks with such confidence, his behavior is just childish. I really want him to stop. Stop the nonsense and just open the door. No way. You always get so full of yourself. Full of myself? What are you talking about? I'm saying you act so arrogant when you think you have the upper hand. In the end, my husband really refused to let me into the house. I was deeply unsettled by his drastic change, wondering how he could have become so different from the man I once knew. We had first met at a social mixer. At that time, he was a successful businessman working for a top company, and he was very intent on winning me over. With his career and finances stable, I was drawn to his advances. He was always polite and respectful, and that didn't change when we started dating. I believe he was a kind and wonderful man, and I was truly happy when he proposed. Karen, I vow to make you happy with these hands of mine. Trust me, and let's build a future together. Yes, thank you. I look forward to supporting each other. I had believed that marrying him would surely lead to happiness, but once we were married, it was far from what I had imagined. My husband turned out to be selfish, arrogant, and prone to verbal abuse. To make matters worse, about 6 months after our marriage, he abruptly quit his job. You quit your job? Why? That company wasn't worth it. They didn't appreciate my talents. Why should a junior be promoted over me? It's absurd. He left his job on a whim, frustrated by his lack of promotion. It was a shocking turn of events. I had respected him as a confident professional working at a prestigious company, and I had tolerated his verbal abuse as a result. But now, my once elite husband was suddenly unemployed. He went to numerous job interviews afterward, but none resulted in an offer. Damn it, why is this happening to me? I come from a top company. Even though I'm lowering myself by applying here, why can't I get the job? Maybe it's your attitude that's coming through in the interviews. Ha! Don't act like you know anything. Your workplace is a lower-ranking company anyway. That's harsh. So, you think so? I'm just speaking the truth. My husband took out his frustration on me. He had always been controlling at home, but his verbal abuse escalated significantly. Eventually, unable to find a new job, he settled for a part-time position working only 3 days a week, claiming it was due to job hunting. His income dropped to around $700 a month, yet he continued to act arrogantly toward me. My view of him deteriorated daily, and I regretted marrying him more and more. I found myself constantly overwhelmed with household chores and meal preparations while enduring his endless complaints. It felt like dealing with a teenager, and I was left physically and emotionally drained despite everything. I couldn't bring myself to consider divorce even though we had been married for less than a year. During this time, my husband grew increasingly bold, eventually setting a curfew for me and locking me out of the house. I wondered why I had to endure such treatment. After coming home exhausted from work and even doing the grocery shopping, he locked me out for missing the curfew. I was completely bewildered. Normally, I would consider returning to my parents' home, but since they had passed away, I didn't know where to turn. Desperate for help, I decided to call my best friend, Mika. Hello, Mika, can I come over now? What's going on? Did something happen? My husband won't let me into the house. What? Why not? Okay, come over right away. Thank you so much. With that, I hurried to Mika's place. Sorry for the sudden visit. Don't worry about it. What happened? I explained how my husband had locked me out of the house because I missed the curfew he had set. He actually did that. Yes, I can't believe it. It feels like he's being really abusive. Maybe his pride from working at a big corporation is making him look down on you. Oh, and I also mentioned my husband's sudden resignation. What? A part-time job? That's unbelievable. How can he act like this when you're the one supporting us? Yes, I'm thinking it might be best to leave him sooner rather than later. But we've only been married for less than a year. It doesn't feel right to just get divorced so easily. Karen, are you truly happy? No. My best friend looked concerned, pondering for a moment before offering a suggestion. I'm not sure if your marriage can be salvaged, but maybe you should start documenting his abusive behavior. You could keep a record or even make recordings. Really? I believe you should divorce him as soon as possible. And if you do decide to go through with it, I hope you can ensure he faces serious consequences. Yeah, you might be right. Exactly. It's important to document everything, and I'm here to support you through this. If you need a safe place, you can always come here. Thank you, Mika. My best friend was a tremendous source of comfort and support, and I was truly grateful. Having her as an ally gave me the courage I needed. To show my appreciation, I used the ingredients I had bought from the supermarket to prepare a homemade meal for her. This is delicious, Karen. You're really skilled at cooking. Really? It's been a while since someone praised my cooking, so I'm thrilled to hear that. Reuniting with my best friend after such a long time lifted my spirits. After leaving Mika's house, I sent an apology to my husband. Once he forgave me, I returned home. Have you really thought about what you did wrong? Yes, I realize I was wrong. I'm sorry. As I apologized with my head bowed, my husband's expression softened with satisfaction. As long as you understand, that's fine. Just be more careful next time. From then on, I did my best to meet my husband's demands. Despite my efforts, he often resorted to insults when he was in a bad mood. His words were belittling and dismissive, and each time they cut deep. I began recording these incidents, gathering evidence for when I reached my breaking point. My husband remained unemployed, only working part-time. It seemed he wasn't even trying to find a new job, as if he had given up. I was managing to support both of us with my income and handled all the household chores. He continued to complain and act badly towards me, trying to assert control. He seemed content with the situation, dependent on my salary, yet treating me with emotional abuse. I confided in my best friend that I didn't want a divorce, but my patience was wearing thin with his increasingly unacceptable behavior. I felt like I was at the end of my rope. How could he be so insensitive? How does he view me? Why did he even marry me? These questions plagued my mind. One day, after being forced to stay late at work, I arrived home past 7:00 p.m. Thankfully, my husband was out and hadn't returned yet, so I managed to get inside and began hastily preparing dinner. But he came home soon after. "Oh, well, welcome back." Noticing that dinner wasn't ready, he looked displeased. "Why isn't dinner ready yet?" "I'm sorry, it will be ready soon." "Don't lie, it looks like you've just started." I apologize. I just got home. As we talked, I noticed he was carrying a bag from an expensive brand. While I was working hard, he had been leisurely spending on luxury goods. His selfishness was infuriating and inexcusable. Despite this, he continued to berate me, completely disregarding my feelings. "Are you incapable of learning, or are you deliberately trying to provoke me? You incompetent fool. If you neglect the household, we'll get a divorce. Do you understand?" In that moment, my patience snapped. Did he really think he was entitled to a meal provided by someone he treated so poorly? "Fine, if that's how you feel, shall we get a divorce then?" "What?" My husband looked stunned. "I've decided to leave this house." "Are you really serious about divorcing me?" "Yes, I can't continue with you. You're superficial, useless, arrogant, and the worst partner I've ever had." My words seemed to ignite fury in my husband. His face reddened, and his whole body trembled with rage. "How dare you speak to me like that? As a low-ranking employee, you have no right to criticize me. I have no use for a woman like you." With that, he pulled out a prepared affidavit from a drawer. I hadn't realized he had it ready, but it worked to my advantage. I quickly signed the document, gathered my things, and left. Now, I had severed all ties with him. Feeling liberated, I headed to Mika's house, where she greeted me warmly. "You've worked hard. Now you're free." "Yes, I wouldn't have had the courage to divorce without your support. I'm really grateful." "Don't let your guard down. It's not over yet. He needs to face the consequences." "Absolutely and thoroughly." I hired a lawyer and filed a lawsuit against my ex-husband for moral harassment. He seemed quite flustered, clearly not expecting a legal battle. "Why me? And don't mess around." He erupted in anger. I was relieved to leave the details to my lawyer, avoiding direct confrontation with his outbursts. My lawyer methodically presented the facts and evidence, and eventually, my ex-husband seemed to resign himself to the situation. He had been blaming me for the divorce to his parents, but the lawsuit compelled them to seek the truth. Upon learning the full story, they were horrified and decided to disown him. Now that he had lost his support system, my ex-husband was left to figure out how to manage on his own. He continued living in the expensive apartment he had always coveted during his employment. Even after quitting his job, I had been transferring money to cover his rent. But now that we were divorced, he had to handle his living expenses, rent, and compensate me for his abusive behavior. With rent set at $1,000 a month and his income not sufficient, he was in dire straits and reached out to me for help. Hello, what's the problem? Help me, I'm at a loss here. Why should I help you? We have no obligations to each other anymore. But we once loved each other, didn't we? That's unsettling. What do you mean? Do you think you're entitled to forgiveness just like that? Do you realize how deeply you've hurt me? I'm sorry, I'll apologize properly. An apology like that means nothing to me. Every time I apologize, you get all self-righteous. It's clear you have no respect for me. Just so you know, my salary has increased. I'm now earning more than you ever did as a full-time employee. What? You used to belittle me for being in a lower position, but it turns out you were the one in a weaker position. Your contentment with a part-time job and failure to find a new full-time role only highlights your own shortcomings. No way. My ex-husband was shattered to discover that he was now inferior to me, someone he had once looked down upon. There's nothing more to discuss. If you contact me again, I'll report you to the police. Hey, wait. I declared this firmly, ignoring his pleas and ending the call. I had already blocked his number and intended to sever all ties with him. Later, I learned from my former in-laws that he had settled his unpaid rent with a loan and moved out of his apartment. He is now working full-time and living in a more affordable place. Despite this, he continues to make alimony payments to me on time, indicating that he's working hard with a renewed sense of purpose. However, that doesn't mean I have any desire to reconcile. I am now living in a spacious new flat with my best friend Mika. We fill our days with fun, conversations, evening drinks, and a peaceful, fulfilling life. I am deeply grateful to Mika for her support and plan to give her a special gift as a token of my appreciation. After my father suddenly passed away from an unexpected illness, leaving behind a staggering $2 million debt, my mother and brother Tham took matters into their own hands. They decided how to handle my father's inheritance without consulting me, leaving me to bear the brunt of the debt. My frustration with them reached a boiling point, but the thought of their future struggles made me smirk inwardly. I'm Nancy, a 24-year-old single woman working as a nursery teacher at a daycare. I graduated from a junior college and have always lived at home with my father, mother, and my brother Tham, who is close to my age. Since childhood, Tham and I haven't gotten along. A graduate of a prestigious university, Tham looked down on me for my junior college education. His arrogance was matched by his frequent mockery of my modest personality and average looks. With your plain appearance and lack of impressive credentials, who would ever want to date you? He would sneer. In reality, I do have a boyfriend, but I keep this a secret to avoid provoking Tham's scorn. Though Tham's sarcasm used to sting, those days are long behind me. I now take great pride in my work as a nursery teacher, finding immense joy in interacting with children and watching them grow. Tham's words no longer faze me. My mother, who reveres Tham for his prestigious university degree, constantly boasts about him to relatives and neighbors. In stark contrast, I was often treated as an afterthought. It was clear that my mother favored Tham and showered him with preferential treatment. Unlike her, my father always had my back. Whenever my mother gave snacks exclusively to Tham, my father would secretly share the same treats with me. He would proudly express his admiration for my choice to become a nursery teacher, and I deeply cherished his supportive gestures and words. My father was the CEO of a small company where Tham also worked. Unfortunately, the company's financial situation had been deteriorating recently. Despite my father's relentless efforts to cut the deficit and his late nights at the office, Tham remained indifferent. I can't work for a company run by someone who looks so evenly poor, Tham said, resigning from the company to take a position elsewhere. Since her marriage, my mother had stopped working and fully dedicated herself to managing the household. With no experience in supporting my father's business, she didn't grasp the challenges he faced. Despite witnessing his daily struggles, she criticized him for the company's lack of success. The company is still struggling. If you don't resolve the deficit soon, I won't be able to buy that new bag from the magazine. Honestly, what are you doing every day? You're completely useless, my mother said. She had an insatiable appetite for spending, especially on luxury items, often making impulsive purchases. Her dismissive attitude toward my father, as if she couldn't see the value of his hard work, filled me with outrage. Though I'm no business expert, I've witnessed my father's tireless efforts from a young age and understand how challenging it is to manage a business. My mother, who has been with him for years, should recognize this as well. I couldn't fathom why she would blame him as though he were incompetent. One day, my frustration boiled over, and I confronted my mother, demanding she stop belittling my father. Her response was dismissive and condescending. Why should I be scolded by someone like you? People without an education should keep their opinions to themselves. Don't speak on things you don't understand, she retorted. Tom, seemingly influenced by my mother's attitude, joined in and criticized me harshly. It was clear that despite sharing the same blood, our values and personalities were worlds apart. Nancy, don't let their words affect you. Education doesn't define your worth. Take pride in your role as a nursery teacher. That's what truly matters, my father said. His words of encouragement warmed my heart and bolstered my resolve. Even though part of me wanted to stand up to Tom and felt overshadowed by him, my father's support made me feel fearless. As long as he was by my side, I knew I could face anything. An unexpected event shattered my world. Father, I was horrified to learn that my father had collapsed at work. The company staff who reached out to me said he was rushed to the hospital in critical condition. Without hesitation, I dashed to the hospital, only to find that my mother and brother were nowhere to be seen. I'm too busy to leave. You'll have to handle Dad's care, my mother said. I was stunned by her response. How could she claim to be too busy when my father's life was at stake? As a jobless person, surely she had more flexibility than I did. What could possibly be more important than being there for my father? In disbelief, I took care of the hospital formalities and listened to the doctor's grim news. My father had acute heart failure and only had a few days left. I visited him as often as I could, hoping to see his smile once more. A few days after his collapse, as if sensing my presence, he briefly regained consciousness while I held his hand. Dad, I'm so relieved to see you. Do you recognize me? Can you hear my voice? I pleaded desperately, but he looked at me with a distant, vacant stare before quietly closing his eyes, never to open them again. Until my father passed away, neither my mother nor Tom made any effort to visit him. They only appeared just before the funeral, clearly reluctant to oversee the arrangements. During our conversation there, it became apparent that my father's company had gone bankrupt, leaving behind a $2 million debt. Inheritances come with debts, my mother said, her tone dripping with disdain. As the funeral proceeded, both she and Tom began to blame my father for the situation. He was unreliable in life, and now he's left us with this burden. What a curse, they complained. What are we supposed to do about all this debt? My mother wondered aloud. I have a suggestion, Tom said with a smirk, turning his gaze toward me. Since Dad had such a soft spot for you, why don't you inherit everything? You can also take on the debt. It's only fair to repay the love you received from him. My mother added, her voice carrying a sense of cold expectation. Unbelievably, my mother and Tom were trying to offload both my father's inheritance and his debts onto me. Despite my father's passing, they were more concerned with their own interests than with mourning his loss. They had always belittled and ridiculed both my father and me, seeing us merely as tools for their gain. However, I had a plan in reserve, something my father had asked me to use if anything happened to him. It was time to put it into action. I decided to keep my true intentions hidden and reluctantly agreed to their demands, all while secretly preparing to execute my plan. Understood. I will take on the entire estate, including the debt. My easy acquiescence surprised both my mother and Tom, considering I was assuming a $2 million debt. They probably anticipated more resistance from me, but their satisfaction in offloading the burden onto me seemed to eclipse any surprise. They looked at me with a mix of triumph and condescension. So, you're actually going to pay off all the debt. We appreciate that. It's lucky for us, even if I don't quite understand your thinking. You really are quite naive, though. I suppose that's to be expected given your limited education, Tom said. My mother and Tom ultimately relinquished their claims to my father's estate. With no other relatives to contest the inheritance, I was the sole beneficiary. After my father's death, I moved out of the home I no longer wished to live in and began a new chapter on my own. It was then that I discreetly set my plan into motion. Several months after my father's passing, one day, "What on earth is this?" Tom, who I hadn't seen in a while, appeared visibly enraged, his face reddening as if he was on the verge of lashing out. His fury was likely triggered by seeing me emerge from a mansion that could only be described as extravagant. Why is Nancy, who supposedly inherited $2 million in debt and has such a low social status, living in a house like this? It was clear that this was the question Tom and my mother would be asking. "Seeing your astonished faces is quite the reunion after so long. I'm glad to see you're doing well," I responded. "Who do you think you are? Making jokes with no education. I want to know what's going on," Tom snapped. "This is where I live. Is it really so surprising to see me coming out of my own home?" Tom, growing increasingly agitated, advanced toward me. However, as a nursery teacher accustomed to lifting children daily, I had developed more strength than the average woman. Tom, who led a sedentary lifestyle and avoided exercise, was comparatively weak. I swiftly overpowered him and had him on the ground in no time. He looked utterly bewildered. As Tom lay on the ground and my mother rushed to his side, I smiled and began to explain. "The reason I'm living here is because of the decision you both made to relinquish Dad's inheritance. Before he passed away, my father had been quietly building wealth through real estate to secure our future. Despite the company's debt, the market value of the properties increased significantly after I inherited the estate. I sold them at the right time, and even after accounting for inheritance taxes, the profit from the real estate exceeded $5 million. My father had anticipated this rise in value, which is why I took on the inheritance, despite the debt. Instead of using the proceeds to pay off the $2 million debt immediately, I first ensured that the employees of my father's company were fairly compensated. Additionally, I received a life insurance payout of $3 million. The amount was truly staggering. Wait a minute, life insurance is usually paid out to the spouse, right? My mother interjected. It appears Dad changed the beneficiary to me, I explained. He had informed me of this while he was still alive. My father was deeply troubled by your harsh words and excessive spending. To ensure that his life insurance money was used wisely, he trusted me to manage it and change the beneficiary. I have a dream that I've kept to myself, one to support and nurture children facing economic hardships. With the funds from my father's estate and the life insurance payout, I built a large house that could easily be called a mansion. While continuing my work as a nursery teacher, I am also applying the real estate investment skills I learned from my father to steadily grow my assets. After explaining everything, my mother and Tom were enraged, their voices rising in anger. "This is absurd. Why didn't you tell us something so crucial? If we had known about the real estate, we never would have let you inherit it." I responded firmly. "Dad anticipated that you would react exactly like this if he knew. That's why he kept it a secret, to prevent you from claiming everything. I didn't expect you to respond just as he predicted, but it seems he was right. What are you talking about? Regardless, we deserve our share of the inheritance. We have a right to it." I was taken aback by my mother's audacious demand for a portion of the assets. It was clear that when it came to money, people reveal their true nature. My mother and Tom were showing their cowardice and arrogance, just as I had always known them to be. "You both forfeited that right when you renounced the inheritance. It's not possible to reclaim it now. I cannot hand over the hard-earned assets my father accumulated to people who are consumed by their own greed." The ignorant, uneducated one just won't stop whining. "Quit your nagging and hand it over now," Tom shouted. Despite their continued baseless complaints, I had no choice but to call security to have them removed. They left quietly after being escorted out. In the following days, security footage showed them loitering near my house, trying to find a way to claim my father's inheritance. Their persistence was unsettling. Using the footage, I reported them to the police as suspicious individuals. After that, I no longer saw my mother or Tom around my home. After some time had passed, I learned about my mother and Tom's situation from a family friend who had been close to us for years. Tom had found a new job, but his self-centered attitude quickly earned him a poor reputation. Within less than a year, he had alienated his boss and was relegated to menial desk work, a far cry from the special treatment he had enjoyed as the president's son at my father's company. Eventually, the harsh work environment took its toll, and he left the job. His tarnished reputation made it challenging for him to find new employment within the industry. "Why aren't you working? Stop lazing around," my mother would admonish. "It's not like I'm just sitting around doing nothing," Tom would retort. "What kind of effort are you putting in, you useless, unemployed person?" my mother would criticize. After witnessing Tom's failure, her attitude toward him changed drastically. Once doting on him, she now blamed him for his incompetence and joblessness, growing increasingly cold and distant. The shift in my mother's behavior placed immense psychological pressure on Tom, eventually leading him to become a recluse. Having relied on my father's income for years and never having developed the skills or inclination to work, my mother now faces financial struggles alongside Tom. Both are struggling to make ends meet. As for me, I am happily married to the man I have been dating, and we now live in the large house I own. My husband shares my passion for helping children in economic need. Together, we are working towards this dream by setting up the necessary facilities and obtaining the required qualifications. I hold deep gratitude for my irreplaceable father, and with my husband by my side, I am living a fulfilling and purposeful life.